Right. And welcome to today's workshop. It's going to be a fairly full-on day, so we'll try and stay on path. Don't veer off. Get over and done with. It's going to be quite sad to be sitting inside and looking out the window at a beautiful day, which we haven't had for a while. I'm sure we could have all been outside doing something. But it's going to be fairly heavy going. Any apologies? I'll just say Simon will turn up at some point. We'll give him a round of applause when he enters. That's what it's always about.
Like you, John.
Thank you. Perfect. Love it. I love it. Welcome, Councillor Beck. 8:46.
Not by that clock.
Just
one of the slides.
You'll be interested, Josh. I was just learning what the Hawksole for the other day.
Right.
It'll It'll pay your bill.
That's even better. You've made my day. I'm so excited. Oh dear. Right, we're going to kick off with the opening statement. Well, that was it. Simon's had a great day. Great today.
Cheers.
Yeah. But to kick it off, I think Julie's got a wee bit of a presentation here for us. And, although you don't think will happen, at times it does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen, trust me. Julie, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. Morning all. This presentation sort of come out of a conversation that I've been having, Anna and I have been having with me and Martin actually about workloads and expectations, and because we know with the workshops and with the meetings going monthly, there's a lot more reading. You're getting a lot more pushed at you than what you've ever had pushed before. Even the existing councils, I don't think you've ever seen the number of papers and stuff that's coming your way. So this is just a wee thing about just from our perspective to try and just give you a little bit of help getting through especially the new councils, getting through the first 3 years, because it's pretty daunting. So just bear with me. So Anna's not here today. She had another family engagement. So Anna as EA to the Mayor and myself as the governance advisor, our role is to help our elected members successfully manage workloads, expectations and commitments alongside your private lives, because you still have those, even though at times you might think you don't. Being an elected member can take its toll, not only on you, but also on your partner, spouse, family and friends. Everything you and your family do and say is now subject to public scrutiny, whether you like it or not. And while you stood for council knowing that you would be in the public eye, your family did not. And trust me, I know firsthand exactly what it's like. My father was the first mayor of the Clutha District Council from 1989 to 1998. And it's pretty hard on the family. It takes its toll, because you know there's a lot of pull on their time, and growing up as well, we were past our teenage years thankfully, but you still had to be anything that we did. Dad was judged on it, so and he got the criticism. So it's really hard on the families as well, and sometimes that's actually forgotten about. So he used to, luckily for him, we had a holiday crib down at Punawea, so he could take time out, and he did. There was no phones, no cell phones, so that was his bolt hole when he wanted to escape and have time with his friends. So you kind of need to have that. Public criticism has been increasing over the past few years, especially amongst the keyboard warriors, and while you may think you're prepared for it and can handle it, sometimes the reality can be quite different. You all got a wee taste of that for the newbies. You got a wee taste of that last Thursday. You had an unpopular decision and you got a bit of heckling. That's going to happen, and it's just how you deal with it that is going to be the important thing. The next couple of years are going to be full on as you work your way not only through the 2026 annual plan, but also the next long-term plan in 2027. And with that comes a workload that some of you could not have even contemplated when you stood for election in 2025. Yes, you probably saw the final printed annual plan and last long-term plan, but did you consider or even understand how it got to that stage? Probably not. As you are finding out, there's a lot of information given to you that you are expected to read and understand so that you can make informed decisions. And at times, this may feel very overwhelming, and that's okay. There's a lot to take in. At no time should you ever feel you're on your own. You are now part of the CDC team, and we are here to help you in whatever way we can. So reach out to your fellow councillors, especially those more experienced, or to Anna or myself. There is a lot of experience around the council table and also amongst council staff. So make sure you take full advantage of this. And always remember, you don't know what you don't know, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. And that's really important. So we do have resources. There are resources available. So if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed or you are struggling, you can get assistance through our workplace support. So Anna Cartwright's our workplace support person. She's available if you need to talk to someone, or there are resources. That's not a very good slide, but there's resources through Akona. So they've got a counselling service as well. So if you can just reach out to them if you want to, if you feel that you are struggling, or talk to Jock. He's there as well. Everyone's there. So if you are struggling, please don't think you're on your own, because you're not. We're in this together. So that's all I had to say. I wanted to just put that first and foremost. So yeah.
Thank you, Julie. That's really good. Thank you. And yes, the support is here, so please do reach out if you do get overwhelmed at times. We've also got the CCO transition. Southern Water's coming up as well to add to the annual plan, long-term plan, and everything else that's going on. So we've got a bit in front of us. But I'll reiterate once again that your communities have elected you to be their community leaders. So leaders lead, and we've got to make decisions. And we can't please everybody all the time, but if we did well, we should be looking at selling ice cream instead of being councillors. So we'll just get on with it and be leaders and lead. Righto, next on the agenda.
Out of the last workshop, there are a number of matters which will be dealt with, 4 of them in this session, and some more, another one later in the day. One will come back to another workshop. The aim here is to just note the updates and discuss matters arising. The first element is the rural water scheme, and Jules Witt will talk to that.
Yes, sorry, Peter, just before. So just the outcomes from the previous ones is 4 items that we're going to talk about. So rural water scheme, economic modelling is the first one. VTRs is something that we need to come back to you on. Voluntary targeted rates, the Cross Rec Centre, options associated with that as it may or may not impact the budget, and the West Otago Community Centre was the other one that was also coming back too. So that's the 4 that Peter is talking about. Also, before we start going through these things, because the first sequence is going to be around what's coming, what's being brought back. We've got some items around submissions that need to be addressed today, and then we're moving into the actual budgetary processes themselves and review of the budgets. But always bear in mind the start point for today in terms of the annual plan budgets is the on pages 47 to 49 of the agenda, which has the start point of the before you make any other changes. The start point that we're starting with is that 19.14% rates increase. So there's a number of subjects like the economic modelling and other topics as we're moving our way through, and reviews and other bits and pieces of the different activities and things. But just always bear in mind that's the start point. Sharon down the back there is where the directions you give us are going to be recorded against that 19.14, so we know where we're going in terms of that. The objective of today is it's our last chance, isn't it, Peter? This is it. This is our last chance to get your direction so that we can go out and draft up the annual plan and the consultation document for your approval, right? So we don't get another chance with you before it comes back for your approval to send it out there and put it out for consultation, right? So this is your chance, and it's our chance to nail these things so we know what we've actually agreed to, or what you've agreed to, for us to put it into the budget, right? So today's the day for that, and that's why I say bear in mind the starting point is that 19.14, and then decisions from today will impact upon that, and we'll go out with what we go out with. Okay, so really important aspect that Jules is now picking up, basically all the work for it, is around economic modelling. We said we're going to bring this back around options for consultation. These aren't decisions, they're just options for consultation. If we want to go down any pathway around dealing with the unsustainability of some of the rural water schemes moving forward based on our LTP forecast. So that's the issue to be or not to be addressed.
Thanks, Steve. So after Julie's presentation, we'll just get into something really light, like rural water scheme rating. I do have to say, this was definitely not something I've done on my own. The finance team have provided all the information, bits and pieces and rates examples, so they've been really essential to putting this together. So thanks very much to them for assisting with that. As Steve's already mentioned, just a bit of background before we get into some of the numbers. The other thing I do apologise is that this has been confirmed over the last couple of days, which is why you didn't have it in the agenda for reading, so I apologise for that. Happy to take a bit more time to go through it, because you haven't had a chance to go through this background beforehand. But in terms of that 19.14%, this is really looking at who pays that, not changing that quantum. So any changes you make to proposed rating methods will just, it'll change who's paying what of that rural water scheme rating that we've identified. So as Steve's already touched on, high increases, rural water scheme, strong sense of ownership. There are changes coming through the CCO, and part of the background is that anything we've looked at should be available to the CCO going forward. It doesn't make sense for us to make a change for 1 year and then the CCO just to throw that out in 2027. And the other thing that we've also added in that we didn't talk about in the previous workshop, this is one of Steve's concepts, is there a public good component for rural water? And should that be funded over the whole district or the whole rural part of the district to pay for a small proportion of that cost? So we'll come to that later on, but I know in the past it's always been your rural water schemes for your area and that's what you've got to pay. But is there actually a wider benefit for some of these things? And that's something that you can debate today and you can give us direction on. And if you say no, absolutely not, that's fine. We've got a line through that and we move on. If you say yes, there is, then that's potentially something we can consult on. So just flagging that now so you can think about that in advance.
Yeah, and sorry, just to probably add to that, I think you should also bear in mind as we are working through this or any other option is that if you put it in for consultation, you can make a decision. If you decide not to put it in for consultation, you can't make a decision, after the submission's closed. You sort of see what I mean? So the point being is that sometimes we do look at these things and go, hey, let's put it out there and reserve our decision-making ability. You're really making a call as to whether this is something you want to put it out there or not. That's the sort of level that you are making a decision on today.
You've got full decision making during the decision process to say no, we're not going to do it, but you won't have the option to do it if you don't put it out there.
So going forward in 2027, when it goes off our box, what, we just forget about it? That's it. So these decisions we make, does it still, for our ratepayers that end up paying to a water entity, do they then have to go and fight a different fight for all their rates of water or how much they're paying? How's all that going to work in the future? Because they are starting to ask.
Yeah. So we have looked at that, and that's why when Jules goes through this, it was really important to us to say, and one of the to say that it needs to be applied for the CCO, right? Certainly in initial years of the CCO. We're very concerned about that, and one of the reasons why we particularly looked at these options is that we thought that it would be preferable for this council to make decisions, if you could, that then at least give you 3, 4, 5 years of certainty around that before the CCO actually did something more to it. Like, I think we're looking at it. You can't guarantee the CCO isn't going to at some point, fully take over things and decide what they want around that, right? And that could mean a lot of things. But what you can do is you can set it up so that the least impact of that occurs for that period of time. So all that we're looking at here supports that side of things, Councillor. So the proposals we're talking about, we believe you'll see feed into the CCO actions that basically supports the activity for 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, through your worship, just on that public good component, yeah, I'm going to struggle to see how that can work under the CCO. At the moment, we pay, in the rural, I pay a small contribution to sewage upgrades throughout, and that's a rate. There's no way, and if someone is currently on no rural water, how are they going to be rated, or how are they going to be charged to a CCO? It can only be applied to those.
Yeah, we sort of discussed that when we get to that part of it, and there is actually a table in the information, the advice that's been given that shows what is available to the CCO.
Yes, it's a bit, where I'm coming from is how could they charge someone that has no water services whatsoever?
They can for up to 5 years. So there's a transition provision in the legislation. So it's not a long-term option for them to do that, for the CCO to do that. The other option, which we still need to get some feedback from the DIA, would be that we charge that public good component and hand that over to the water CCO. But that's a decision for council. Do we still want to be rating for that component of water when everything's being delivered by a separate CCO? But that's part of the discussion and decision that you need to think through. We'll be talking about that later on in the PowerPoint.
So if you went down the pathway of, so what we can say to you is that if you decided that spreading the cost in this way was appropriate, public good was appropriate, the mechanism is there, as we said, for up to 5 years for that to occur. So we've done the homework and said, yes, it can apply. And that's part of the answer to Councillor Kennedy's question around how do we ensure such and such. Well, if this is how you want to distribute things and allocate costs and that side of things to achieve a particular purpose, we've done the homework to show you that it can be done. The individual debates are all part of what Jules is doing, because he's just going to do the info for you and you can work your way through. We're just saying to you, can be done. Right? So
Yeah, it just doesn't, when we're doing rating and setting things up, creating anything that may only have a lifespan of 5 years is not, we should be doing our best to make enduring decisions.
Yep, and that's part of the discussion and the presentation as well.
but just remember, when the CCO picks things up, we have no enduring decision.
No.
Right? The only enduring decision would be, for example, if you did this, the law says, or the legal advice says, what you set as a rate will apply for up to 5 years. They can't knock it out for 5 years.
They're supposed to transition it out, though,
Yeah.
so it'll decrease over those 5 years.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be creating charges that may only have a 5-year benefit. That's probably where I'm
Absolutely, that's part of what's highlighted that you need to debate today in the slides.
Yeah, but the issue would be the same. If you make a decision that potentially says, hey, let's look at it all as one bucket, like we've done with urban and stormwater and things like that. It's the same problem you've got. There's actually no technical decision you can make that's going to be survive automatically past the July 27th. So,
through you, Your Worship, and I suspect from my involvement that that's going to happen. Things are going to change after the 5-year period.
I can change before that too, that's up to the
Yes.
CCO, but
Yes.
we also get to provide some direction in terms of our feedback to the CCO and how you set it up as well. So there is the ability to influence that from all the councils as those rules are being set up.
I simply think that we're going to give you a potpourri of things that you can pick and choose and say, we don't want any of these, or we want this, or we want a mix of it. But the point is that if we settle on something, we're relatively confident that we can build that into our statement of expectations from our perspective to the CCO, that at least drives that through for a period of time.
There is a table on about the 4th page of the advice that has the different options and what can be done by us and what can and can't be done by the CCO. So that can be something to look at later on, or when you're thinking about giving direction, you might even have a pause for a few minutes to read that. But yeah, we're going to raise these issues as we work through the presentation as well.
because this is on that public good for rural waters. Okay, we're arguing, okay, the rural water schemes, provide water and the stock gains a lot of income and that flows through the district. But then those on private schemes also do that.
Do you actually know how many private ones are out there?
Not individual property ones, but we know there's only a handful of multiple property.
Yeah, but I'm talking about individuals
Yeah,
with their own water schemes. They also provide a public good out of their own. So
This is the exact debate that you'll have when we get to those options.
Well, you might knock it out.
Yeah,
The
that's
point
right.
is, it's just pretty great.
Thought it was a stretch, but we thought we should put it to you soon. So the next slide is thank you, Yay, for printing an A3 version of it. I thought this was useful because it actually shows the projected cost per unit under our current model. So you might want to highlight one or two parts of this if you've got a highlighter, but we thought you might keep the A3 version separate and refer back to that as we work through. I thought it was also interesting to show not only the cost per unit of our rural supplies, but also the cost for our urban stormwater, wastewater, and urban water. So you can see the urban water's pretty high. Even if you're paying 2 units for the rural water schemes for a household, it's probably most schemes are less than what an urban household's paying. So those are there just for information. And also, if you want to refer back to these as we work through the different rating options, you can see how much each of these unit rates would drop. So that's more for future reference as we're working through the options, because there's just so much information I couldn't put it all on every slide. And hopefully, if we can refer back to these, we can it'll give you a bit of a picture about some of those costs. So that's for interest and for future reference as we work through the rating options.
And I think what we'll probably be looking for is that Jules will explain each of the different options we're discussing. You would question anything about understanding that. He's got a separate section after he's explained the different options for you to then debate or discuss each of the options as a result. So we were hoping that you would sort of get them all in front of you, have your questions, and then debate the individual ones from there.
Okay, so if you just keep that to the side, you might want to refer back to it as we work through some of those options, because some of the changes of charging or increases in charging are an amount in terms of per unit. So they would make those unit rates increase or decrease by a set amount, rather than showing every single rate every time. So the first one we discussed last time was availability charging. And the advice we've had is that the new water entity can do availability charging. It wouldn't automatically be 50%. The original schemes were designed on certain quantities per litres of supply per hectare per day. Now, different schemes have done different upgrades. So in some areas, those things have been thrown out the window, and it's based on the current design. In the urban areas, so we already charge this in urban areas, and it's charged automatically at 50% of the unit rate. That wouldn't necessarily be the same for a rural scheme. We would need to do some work to look at what the fixed charges are for that scheme versus the variable charges. And the key aspect that we did discuss last time is who this would be applied to. So one way to do it, and the way we do it in our urban areas, is we define an area. So if within this area you pay an availability charge if you're not connected and paying towards the scheme through your normal rates. And there is a risk with that with our rural areas, as I said, because there would, if you go to the next slide, because then you would actually have to commit to supply those areas, and we haven't done the work to say yes, we can supply all those areas. We know some of the schemes struggle in some areas, so that would be a risk for us to do that. The other thing we discussed before was if you've disconnected from the scheme recently, so we know the scheme can supply it, then that could be a benchmark we use to say, well, actually, you need to pay an availability charge. And we have, part of the discussion was people are looking at whether they can disconnect, and the process we've had for that is it gets referred back through to the scheme chairman or the committee, and they consider that. So what we thought we would do is let's look at the last 3 years of changes in unit rates, because if there have been lots of disconnections, we didn't think there would have been under the process we're in, but this table shows the net change for every rural scheme apart from Wongaloa over the last 3 years. And we had to do the net change because if you look at an individual property, you might have had a property that units dropped significantly, but it actually was a subdivision. So those units didn't actually drop off the scheme, they went to another property. So we've had to look at the net change. And you can see there's actually only been 4 instances out of all of our schemes over the past 3 years where there's been a net reduction in units, and they're relatively low as well. So this is an option going forward if we're looking at charging people who have disconnected.
it may not actually bring in a whole lot of extra income, but this is an option if there are potentially more disconnections occurring. And we've got the legal opinion, they can charge on this basis, even if the property's not connected. That is available to rural schemes. They are going to continue to do that in urban areas as well. So it is provided for in the new legislation.
Your Worship. Jules, just a question, well, a statement really. I do know of a lot of farms that there's been a change of land use, obviously to trees, and they're all sitting back there waiting, probably till the CCO is set up, and then.
But this is an option that is available to the CCO. So it's something that you could decide to consult on this and even not put it in. But it is an option for the CCO to bring in charging based on availability. So if a pipe is within 100 metres or there's a certain distance, so if it goes through the property, it's definitely within 100 metres, or if it's within 100 metres, even on road reserve or something like that, the CCO can charge an availability charge.
Yeah, and I think so. We should be doing that.
Even if they've never been connected to the scheme, they can do that too, but I think that's quite a stretch.
I think the debate is about how much, not whether we should do it. In my eyes, we should be doing it. But the debate is it 50%, or is it 75, or is it 80?
I think we would probably need to do some work on that. But I mean, you would, without doing any work, you'd apply the 50%. But I think the argument is we should be looking at what are the fixed charges that the capacity is costing, and then that availability charge, at least there's a basis for setting it. If that's the basis we're going to set it. I mean, it could be 50, could consult on 50% or some other to be confirmed.
So certainly, I know personally, especially about the top one there, what's going on, but I do know what's coming.
So far this year, there's been a net reduction of 5 units.
Yeah, which is neither here nor there, but it's going to be more significant.
That's right, and that's why this is really looking to the future. But yeah, happy to answer any questions on this.
Those to you, Chair Jules. So all those schemes are supplying homes?
Everyone's supplying homes, and
Waipahi.
a number of them are supplying. Waipahi's not, sorry.
No.
But I thought I took Waipahi out.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Waipahi is out in the financial modelling coming up. But you know, Waipahi's stock water only.
Right. So although we say it's stock water only, so how are they charged? The same sort of thing, or
No, unit rates, same unit rates.
Unit rate.
Pretty much. You go back to you work back to your big sheet.
Yeah.
Waipahi's there. Yep, 225 projected to go up to 440 in 3 years though.
Right.
So yeah, it's increasing, but it's same thing. Unit rates. There's the same risk with people getting off the Waipahi scheme. Do they still want to? If they're going to be financially viable, this is still an issue for them, whether there's people drinking or not. So we can save the merits of whether we do it for later on. It's just more making sure you understand what we're talking about and then thinking about, is this something that we want to consult on and put in place? And again, is it something that the CCO can continue with? And our advice is yes, they can. Right, well, the legal advice we've had.
Dean, I think you were.
Through the chair. How do we go then, Jules, like where North Bruce is basically going to have 250, 290 units available from Waihola, which we'll have to on sell. That's great, but we can't actually get it down the main pipelines.
Well, part of the work would be looking at who wants the water, and then part of the work about connecting that is what investment's required to get it to where you can sell it. So this is an issue that we haven't discussed with council, but when council invested in the extra money and capacity of Waihola, part of the discussion at the time was the rural water scheme shouldn't be disadvantaged because council's investing in growth. And one of the things that we had discussed to bring back to council, at the moment, the urban water is still paying for that water that is going to Waihola. There's been no reduction in contribution, even though that water is not being used. And what we had discussed with the scheme committee was a 5-year transition period, where for over a 5-year period goes down 20% a year. That gives the scheme opportunity to sell those units. Where we are now, that'll be an opportunity throughout the CCO. But I think that's again, council decision how you want to do that. That gives the scheme the opportunity to sell those units and figure out where they can sell them.
Well, I know in the last 14 years we've doubled up on pipe work to try and get capacity. but even there was one farm got 11 more units. Well, that's dropped it all the way back to the point that at our place, which is the last one for a PRV or after a PRV, we can be some days there with no water at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's other upgrades the scheme's got to do.
Yeah, we've got to do major, basically the full length from the reservoir.
Well, potentially, depending on what size pipe you put in, it doesn't necessarily need to be the full length. What you're looking to do is reduce pressure losses for those higher flows. So that's where we would look at where does the scheme committee think they can sell those extra units? You could even do a survey of the scheme as well. So, hey, we've got these extra units, we want to sell them, and actually do that modelling work. But at this stage, we haven't reduced the contribution from urban, and potentially we could start that 5-year period, but given the CCO is kicking off in 12 months, just over 17 months from now, is it something we leave for the CCO to start to look at how they do that, especially if there's changes in how the rural water schemes might be funded. It might be overtaken by other changes in how things happen.
Yeah, just to comment, that availability charge, 50% availability charge on a rural water scheme, I'm pretty sure that with the exception of maybe some of the big forestry companies, any farmer that was considering looking at doing their own individual scheme would drop it. They would have to stay, unless they thought they could do it at under half the cost.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. Because there's a cost to the scheme to have that capacity for that property.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as we're wanting to help the disconnection risk, pretty sure that would do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep moving, your worship, because that's one.
That's one option. So, for the councillors who have been here for a few years, there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth when we moved urban areas to the same service, same charge model. We haven't really considered that in depth for our rural supplies previously. But given how we're looking at affordability and potentially in the future that could be an option, we thought, actually, let's have a look at what this might mean.
Also, as we are actually getting off-boil water notices, and same service is same service, it does raise the point. Start looking at.
And the one thing that we already have touched on is Waipahi. Is Waipahi does not have the same service. It's just a stock water scheme. So it's got a much lower level of treatment. It's got a much lower level of compliance. So at this stage, we've just excluded them completely. We've taken them out of the calcs. You can decide to bring them in later on if you want to, but it's not really consistent with same service, same charge, because they're not even getting close to the same service.
The only reason you put them in is if all of a sudden there's an appetite for houses to connect to that.
They can't without.
Okay.
No, they can't.
That's fine.
That would need a new treatment plant and all sorts of stuff for that to happen. If they really want to do something on site, they could do that themselves. But on every property file, it says YP Rural Water Scheme is stock water only. Yep. You're not allowed to connect it and use it in your house. The story. Yep. Interesting, when we did have a service request come in saying the house has got no water, what's wrong with the water scheme? So you're not supposed to be connected. So they got a visit pretty quickly. So in terms of that, we've looked at what actually would a single water rate mean if we did that for the 26-27 years. So we've got the projected scheme rates on the left-hand side. You've got the universal water rates. Everybody would pay $545 per unit. And the difference shows that everybody would be paying more other than the Balmoral, Tupeka or Greenfield scheme. So it's not particularly palatable, especially if you're in the Moa Flat or South Bruce Rural Water Scheme. Most of the others are not a massive increase, but those two schemes would have a significant increase to fund the 326. Bruce.
I'm a bit ignorant on the South Bruce scheme. Why is their rate so cheap? Is it a pretty old scheme? Or?
No, it's interesting. South Bruce is almost exclusively dairy. The modern, originally dairy areas were 310 litres per hectare per day. South Bruce upgraded to 450 litres per hectare per day. So they supply a lot of units over a small area. So they've got quite a cheap cost they've got a big density of units. So the costs are cheaper because they're in a relatively small area. They can supply a lot of water with not massive lengths of pipe like our other big rural schemes. So they've got benefits of that increased density that allow them to have a cheaper water rate.
Yeah, the next one.
So the next slide is, well, actually that's only 1 year. What does that mean if we apply it across the next 3 years? And this is where you start to see some other benefits for other schemes. So the universal unit rate, and this is where you might want to refer back to your cost per unit table, because we haven't shown a massive thing of 9 columns. You can see that there is actually benefits for other schemes as they get higher. Universal unit rate does actually climb up as the overall increase in the water rates occurs, but you do still have significant additional costs for 1 or 2 or 3 schemes. So that's the balance you have to look at. Is that fair? Is that something that would be palatable? We haven't looked at it before, but here is the information in front of you about what it would mean based on our current estimates for the next 3 years. So if you refer back to that table you had, you can see what the universal water rate would be, unit rate, compared to what some of those schemes are paying. But the difference is shown there. So you can see the extra or the reduction that would be applied to those schemes.
For you, Your Worship. Jules, it's worthy to note, as you all know, I was part of the Chairman's Forum, and we started meeting way back when COVID was happening. But the general consensus under the last central government's 3 waters proposal was our schemes stick together, and the expectation that something like this might happen, and everyone was very aware that there'll be winners and losers out of it. But that was the thought then. I'm not saying it is now, because some of this would be a hard sell, but that certainly was floating around in part of the discussions we had.
Yeah. So that's an extreme. So
Simon had his hand up.
I was going to say there's an extreme, but the next thing we're going to show you is, perhaps a little more palatable.
There's an interim step.
Sorry, Simon.
Yeah. Okay, I might wait for the next slide, because I was just going to say that it could almost be a parallel one. It showed what you would be under what the rate would be under the ordinary standard, because some of those schemes there, with the big increases at the top, they're looking at quite substantial unit costs.
Yep,
under our current regime.
Yes.
Yep. And that's where you can flick back to that A3 sheet.
Yeah.
You can see what they were going to be. This is the difference between the projected unit rate and that universal unit rate.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next slide.
Hang on, Dane.
Oh,
Do
sorry.
you have a question?
Oh, no, I'll leave my flavor. It's also just been this modelling here showing pretty much harmonisation of leader as a leader throughout a district. I'm also taking into consideration of townships that are also connected to the exact same water and how their costs are actually over and above this harmonisation.
Yep, they would still get the benefit of that, because the way it works is whatever the rural water scheme rate is, that cost is passed on to the urban water unit, or urban area, and then it's basically spread the cost over those urban areas. So if there was a reduction from a township that was connected to one of these schemes, that would, a small amount, because it's only paying so many unit rates, that would be passed through to the urban water thing, the urban water business unit as well. But then it's spread across all the urban areas too. So direct costs from townships with their own plants, and the rural costs coming in, and then it's all equalised across the district. Yeah, the district urban rate base.
Yeah.
So,
but to me, the argument comes down to a leader's a leader. A leader is a leader.
Yeah.
In our district, you're getting treated water.
Yeah, John Herbert's not here, but I'll channel John Herbert and say the Moa Flat Water Scheme invested in a scheme in the past that had lower operating costs, and his argument was always they should get the benefit from that. Again, a South Bruce customer might say, we're a high density area that does have lower costs. Why should we be paying more to support others? That's going to be the arguments for some of those things. So what we did when we brought in urban harmonisation, for quite a number of years, we had a model where we looked at the average and we said no one should pay more than a proportion over the average. So effectively what you're doing is saying there should be a limit, and we should help those high cost schemes in some way. So it's not making everybody pay a universal rate. There's still going to be some differentials, but there's more of an argument to say, actually, you're still getting some benefit if you had a cheaper one, but we're helping out those who are really high. So I've looked at, we've done a model here to look at a threshold of 20%, it might have been 10% actually. I looked at 20 and I looked at 10, and in the end I put 10% in there. So that should be 10% on that slide. And what that says is, if you look at the average, we're going to lower any high ones so they meet that 10% above that average. So if you flick to the next slide, and this is how, before we did universal harmonisation of urban, we did this for a number of years. Bruce will remember this. We did it for, I think, at least 6 or 9 years, where there was a little bit of assistance across everybody to help those high cost schemes and bring them a wee bit cheaper. So under that model, if we use 10% above that universal unit rate as the threshold, the only scheme that would be for getting assistance over the next 3 years is the Balmoral to Pika scheme. And so that shows what the unit rate would be under that solution, and the funding required for that is shown below. Now this excludes YPE like we talked about before, and that would mean a $60 increase on the unit rate for every other water scheme, rural water scheme customer. But you can see when you look back at those other ones of 200 and 160 for Moa Flat and for South Bruce, it's actually a uniform increase for everybody. But interestingly enough, for the next 2 years, it's only actually $10 and $11. So it's a 1 year that's a wee bit higher, and that would mean that their unit rate would be pulled back to that 600, 669 and 739. Which when you look at the increases, it's actually, as the other schemes increase, the assistance for Balmoral to Pika reduces, because but it still keeps them at only 10% above the average across the district. So this is like I suppose, it's what we call harmonisation in our urban area, and it's really targeting the unit rates that are above a certain threshold. And on our current modelling, it's only Balmoral to Pika. And I think this is a much fairer option than having $250 a unit for South Bruce. But this is just another option that you have, and this is potentially an option that could be on the way to a universal charge in the future, because you're really helping those higher ones, and as all the other ones come up, at some point it'll be actually we're on our path to a universal water rate. But happy to answer questions about that.
Yeah, Your Worship. Jules, yeah, I see the sense in all this. There's a couple of things that we need to remember. As currently, we're the only council entering the CCO with rural water schemes, so we've got a lot of input into that. That may change, we don't know. So, and also the other thing to remember is with Balmoral to Pika is the maintenance cost should be lower going forward for quite some time. The depreciation certainly is, isn't it?
The depreciation won't be, because we're supposed to be funding our $26 million of investment. And remember, council's only decided to fund 25% of the depreciation.
Yes.
So
that's going to.
But that was supposed to go to 50 and to 100. Now we don't know whether the economic regulator is going to say, actually, to be sustainable, you need to be funding more depreciation. So that's still got to be worked through by the CCO and their funding model.
But then the trade-off was to pay down debt, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can usually, from an accounting perspective, what we normally do, and Sharon or Greg can confirm this, you can fund your depreciation but pay off your capital, your principal for your loan. You can use that to fund your principal. So you're not really putting your depreciation away, you're using it as you collect it. So rather than, you're really rating it for depreciation, but then you pay off your principal. So you don't actually build up a depreciation fund at the start when you've got principal payments.
I think as a council, we need to look at this really hard, because I believe once the CCO gets control, there will be this happening sooner or later. So we need to, for our consumers, we need to do the best we can here, I think. So.
If we're looking at, is there another possible option now that I've seen these two things here, where you have a combination of that availability charge? So the availability charge is universal across the district, and then you have an individual scheme charge on top of that. So you're getting.
You can't, through your worship, you can't call it an availability charge. You can only charge an availability charge when the property is within 80 or 100 metres of the pipeline.
Yes, but I'm just looking at the funding for the scheme. So all those users that are on the schemes, there's a universal availability charge over the district, say 50%, and then there's an individual scheme charge.
Yeah. So you
just a different, very interesting.
Yeah. So just I think what are you suggesting that what you're looking for is a fixed charge, for example, across all the schemes?
Yeah.
Per unit,
Which is equivalent to the universal
Yeah.
charge,
And
as a proportion, some proportion to be determined, and then there'll be a variable charge
yeah,
as well.
I'm saying 50% of the total costs of the water schemes, and that's apportioned across the units. And then those individual schemes cover the other 50% as they, and just what that would, I'm just curious as to what.
There's many ways, there's many ways to cut this, Jules, if you go back to the universal one, Peter, there's many ways in which that universal one could be split, played around with, and you can make a combination if that's where you want. I mean, the point of what Jules is proposing in terms of the, no more than X amount % above the average is exactly the same sort of thing to try and do, which says that the same way. So the point being, though, I suppose, is all those are examples of harmonisation of some form spread over time if you're not going to do it all in one lump sum. And if you were to say, well, that's something we would consider because that's a jump in itself, then it's okay, well, what are the choices that we can put together that you are comfortable with to be able to consult on, right? So there's many different ways we can play with that.
I was going to say at the end, if you've got another model and it's not too complicated, I might be able to go away and work on it and bring it back to you later.
Yeah. No, because I am interested. I'm comfortable. I'm liking looking at these models. There's possibly still more options.
Absolutely. We still haven't got into the public good one yet.
But I'm hearing there's 4 slides on public good, and it may be that was just, again, another opportunity to think of other ways, but we don't have to have much time on that if it's not really going to go very far. If you like some of these other options better, then we don't have to spend the time on it.
So you're aiming that, Simon, at, say, forestry companies, et cetera, if you throw that in there with the availability, they'd be better off to say keep on a big farm 10 units of firefighting in the tanks that are available, and they're still locked in, which helps every other person on that.
No.
Yeah.
Is it a fixed charge plus a variable charge rather than availability charge?
A fixed charge.
Yeah, that's what he means.
Fixed charge for 50% of the average
A
cost.
cost of the average cost of all the rural water of the district.
Yep. So if you go back a couple of slides, Peter. So if you look at that number at the top, the fixed charge would be half of that universal rate.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a variable component based on the scheme costs on top of that.
I'm just curious
to see what it looks like.
Well, we can
do that.
Jules can do that. Because we are making progress. If there is, it's got to get past your direction, but we can certainly do that as an option.
Yep.
At the moment, like what we're probably thinking is the availability charge for recent disconnects makes sense.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And people are prepared to pay that.
And we do something around universal, but within a way that you're comfortable with. It is some sort of mix of something, not too extreme, right? Is that what we're sort of feeling?
So that universal, the unit rate, depending on the land use, they use different portions of units, wouldn't they? So does it come down?
It's
How do you calculate that? Would it be a area rate?
No, it's just it's a connection. Each customer's decided over time how many units they need. So if you've got a dairy farm who's got a supplementary water source, they might not have many units. But I suppose the thing to remember is if you're in South Bruce and you've got 100 units on a dairy farm, you're looking at $250 to $300 an extra unit for all 100 units. That's per unit charge extra.
If you did
that model.
Which is
so they're going to be squealing, saying, crikey, that's expensive for us. So that's why
it's got to be fair.
we've looked at other options that spread that over everybody equally rather than a few paying a lot. But also looking at in the second and third year, like the first year at $60, if you go forward a couple of slides. So the first year it's $60 per unit for everyone who's not in the Balmoral Topeka scheme. Those next 2 years it's only $10 and $11. So if I was someone in the South Bruce scheme, that would be way more palatable to me to knock the top off the Balmoral Topeka scheme. Fundamentally, people may be opposed and say, you're in that scheme area, that's what you should pay. But this is looking at different options you might, and we do talk about hybrid options at the end where you might combine some of these.
So what we could do is, that's a potentially more palatable option. That would be a good option to test against something like Councillor McAtamney suggesting, and we can bring a table to show that. Jules can do that.
Lunchtime or something.
We can do that after lunch. Yep. Because it's an important thing to get right.
Can we really quickly whip through the public good stuff? There's just some interesting stats there.
Well, you just want to show, you've done the stats, but if we're not going to go anywhere with it.
Well, I just want to make sure people realise. So we currently, as Councillor McAtamney's already noted, 10% of new wastewater schemes and wastewater upgrades are currently funded across the district on a capital value rate. So unless we continue to charge for that, that will be phased out over 5 years under the CCO, because that's not an option for them to rate longer term. One of the interesting things I thought was, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so we've already had this debate. Is it actually something we want to look at? Can you go to the next one, Peter? Just go pretty quickly. Can you go to the next slide? Yep. So actually, what is the split of capital value across our district? Because whilst we rate from capital value, I hadn't looked at who's paying what. So about 23% of our district's capital value is connected to our urban water supplies. That will mean there are a few farms on the periphery that potentially are captured by that. And it was really even between rural properties not connected, 38% of the district, rural properties that are connected to a rural water scheme, 39%. So it's almost equal between the ones that are rural, between those who are connected and those who aren't. So if we were going to apply a capital value rate just to the rural area, about half of the district is not currently connected to a rural water scheme, who would be then contributing to those rural water ones. We didn't include urban because we've already harmonising across urban, and then you look at the urban rates and they go, well, why aren't you helping us across the whole district? And we thought that was definitely a step too far. So that's why with this modelling we've done, it only looks at the rural. No, that's what we thought too. So if you go to the next slide, what does that mean for a customer? So if we were going to charge a rural support rate for a 10% reduction across all rural water schemes, so that if you look at those rural water rates, that would knock 10% off their rate. So Balmoral or Tuapeka would get about a $90 decrease. The other ones would still get a decrease as well. And the thinking would be this would only be done in conjunction with another funding model. So you'd have some other support that would be part of it, and then this on top of it. So rural dairy, $3.6 million value, would pay $565 more per annum plus GST. And then the percentage increase that's in the draft for this year would go from a 3% increase to 12%. You can see a $9 million sheep and beef farm would be paying approximately $1,400 a year more. That would take their increase from about 3% to 12%. Lifestyle block would be paying $69 more. So just wanted to show you what it looks like, so you know when you confirm what you're going to do, which we've had a pretty clear steer in terms of what that would look like. And this would have to be transitioned over. If this stays with the water CCO, it has to be transitioned out over 5 years. So it's not a long-term solution.
So
Therefore,
yeah, so if we weren't on a water scheme at all, what would it cost you a year? What are you expecting?
Those figures there, the 500. If you were a rural dairy farm that has all your own water, you'd be paying $565 more.
Not per unit.
No,
Not per
just-
unit.
Oh, it's just per property.
It's total per
that's-
property.
That's
Not per
what you-
unit.
Right, okay.
This is a fixed.
How are you going to work out how much we use? Yeah. So
No,
that's
not per unit.
property.
And this would be every rural property in the district. That's why that graph showing the split of those who were connected and who aren't connected to the rural water scheme shows you people who would be paying who are getting no benefit from other than the district-wide benefit of the economic activity in general.
Yeah, but that's why it's unfair, because those people who are unconnected on farms, most of them will have their own private schemes, and they are providing a public good benefit through their contribution to our economy anyway.
That's why it's 10%, because it's to reflect a small amount, and we use 10% because it's what we're using for wastewater upgrade support. Because there's the debate about that charge as well.
Yeah, but
Those farmers are paying for that too.
But the public good comes from the water use. It doesn't matter whether it's council supplied or private.
Yep, all good. Just wanted to show it to you so you can say,
Yeah.
we've looked at it and it's not something we want to consult on. That's easy.
Absolutely
That's
not.
good. Alrighty, so we could probably skip through the next couple of slides and go straight to the council direction one.
Yeah, although, I
We
think
need
what
to do some work, might need to hold it over.
yeah, I think what we'd be suggesting is we hold that because we've listened and we think that, we just want to add one more table, which is the, what was suggested by Councillor Family. And Jules can do that and we can bring that back so you can just see it side by side. And we'll go from there. So we'll come back and then you can give us the direction on where we might go with it.
And availability charging, if it's for future, then we can bring that in and consult, and that's sitting there for the CCO to continue with as well.
But we'll just get a direction on that later when we bring it both back.
That availability is quite interesting because last year, I think one forestry company got disconnected, 15 of their tanks, totally disconnected.
Oh, they must be still be paying.
I gather they
It
are,
will be
but,
till July.
you know, that's going to happen more, isn't it?
Yep, well, and they can potentially, they would, if, just because they're disconnected from the scheme, doesn't mean they're not paying their water rates. They do, there's potentially the option of saying, well, actually, we're going to go to an availability charge, and then that'll drop down. But at the moment, we don't have that as a rating option. If you want that, well, we can discuss it when we bring back the other option. But yeah, that would be looking forward, and it is available to the CCO.
And that was one of the smaller forestry companies, so if you got the Alden starting to do that,
It's going to happen.
So we're covering that.
We'll do some work and bring it back to you.
But then there could be in a time where there's a major fire goes through and then they change back to farming in other sectors, you know, over time and years to come. That'll happen too.
Yeah,
So we've seen that.
Those schemes have to be maintained, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because then if they just left, it's like the next,
You pretty much have to put new pipes in if they're just left, with forestry and that on them as well. Some forestry we were looking at doing those disconnections at the boundary, and then that pipe's just going to be destroyed basically by the trees.
And to be honest, they don't want it for fighting fires, like a 5,000 gallon tank's not going to do much.
No.
A lot of them are building dams,
Yeah.
and they're happy for all forestry owners within the vicinity.
I've noticed a few of them have actually put firefighting companies into their
Yes.
tents.
Right,
We'll just move on, please, guys, rather than getting into the detail of firefighting. It's a really full on day. Do that.
You can do it from there if you want, Sharon. You've got the
Mike, in front of you. Sitting by a bit of paper.
Yeah.
Come on down, Sharon.
Or you can.
Okay, so this is just an update on voluntary targeted rates that we talked about last time. So I've just put a bit of background on how they work and what we've done and why we ended up having to get advice on them. So you can just go to the next one, please, Peter. That's just that. And so we got contacted our lawyers, and they've only just recently come back to us because they have a massive Christmas break, and they've come back with some questions that they want some input for. And I guess the one we're really looking for some direction from you guys about is the first one. What is the appetite for providing VTRs and what for? I think the other ones are pretty standard. Go to the next one, please, Peter. So, and this is just what we did before. We had council approval to offer it for home heating and insulation, sewage connections and dust suppression. And with the approved list of suppliers, we didn't really have that. We just had people, tradies would apply to us to be on a list, so we could say to people, these people want to do this, work for you, if they, like for home heating and stuff. And we just worked out a small loan over 3 to 5 years with interest charged at our internal interest rate and rated them 1/5 of that or 1/3 of that, whichever period they chose. The other thing we did have, though, which I didn't put on the slide, is for the home heating, we had a limit of $5,000 on that for the home heating and insulation. That was like heat pumps and things like that. But we didn't have limits on the other things. Dust suppression had a standard cost, though, Jules, didn't it?
That has changed when our maintenance contract changed. But
Sharon, just a question here. So can you just give us a bit more detail around this for some of the newer councillors that are unaware of your VTRs? Like, what did we do before offered for home heating and insulation sewage connections? Just a wee bit more detail.
Yeah, so we had on our website, you could go on and apply if you wanted to put in a heat pump because it was like clean heating. You could go and apply to us to do that, and you'd organise a quote and a tradie, And if you ticked all the boxes on our application form that ECA helped Greg do, didn't they? So if you filled that in and fit all the criteria and you had not defaulted on your rates, we always check that for the last 3 to 5 years, then we would, if it was $5,000, we'd work out the loan repayments on that over 3 years or 5 years, whatever you chose, at our internal interest rate, and just add that to your rates at that time. So you weren't paying the $5,000 up front, you were paying it over 5 years. It's just to help our communities out a bit. And the same for sewage connections. We had some of them were like 9,000, one was $9,500 out at Breakneck Road in Lawrence, I think. It was one of the bigger ones, and they could do the same thing. And the dust suppression for like the semi-permanent ceiling past your house if you live, what is it, less than 100 metres from a road. A gravel road.
And we've, through you, Your Worship, we've had people who've said they can't afford to fix their sewage I&I issues. So one of the things we did want this for was to help those people out.
Yeah.
So that helps us.
What was the uptake like, Sharon? Did you get good buy-in?
Oh, a lot for home heating, Greg, like hundreds.
Could you, would you not, solar power not be considered for something like this too, with the way electricity prices are going?
Guess that's what you guys are going to provide direction on today. This was, we haven't provided it for quite a few years because Auckland Council got in a spot of bother with how they were going about it. So everybody just stopped until we got the government to sort of change the rules and say, yes, you can do it.
You had, because it's a rate, you had to be specific about what the rate was for. And so we only started with a couple, and then, you know, new things come along and you go, oh, actually there's a demand for this, and it should be, but you can't do anything because it's not been, it hasn't been consulted on as a rate. And then we had problems with the legal issues associated with it, that it wasn't correct. So that's why we've been sitting for 2 or 3 years, or maybe 4 years even, with something that is very desirable by our community, and it suits us for the sorts of things we want done as well. So it's a great facility. We couldn't do it before legally. We can now. We want to get back into it, but we do need to specify additional targets, and that's really what we're talking about here. Is can we bring it back in again because there's a demand and we think it's really beneficial for the community, and that it's not the same as saying, hey, I need to pay my rates from from the value of my house. Those sort of schemes, not at all. This just simply puts a loan onto your rates that we can recover, and it's at a fixed period, so it's not forever.
It's just like a hire purchase agreement, isn't
it? It is.
Simon.
Yeah, the question there, Sharon, that offered the period of 3 to 5 years, was that, how have we come about that? Or was that a previous decision? Could it be longer? Or?
It could be longer if you choose to. That just came, it was the base agreement from ECA had that, and so we just stuck with that for everything.
Yeah. Because otherwise you're sort of competing with banks if you're going too long.
Yeah, and the second thing is from the question's been raised about what different options this could be used for. That we have to be careful with debt caps there, with how much the council would be prepared to lend out to such a scheme, especially when I know solar was mentioned. The council got in on that. That could, you know, what I'm meaning is here you might say we're only going to lend out $1 million on voluntary targeted rate.
There's a lot of banks, through you, Your Worship, offer low interest solar energy loans.
ANZ's 1% for anything green now for your house.
Up to 80K.
Yeah.
Solar, whatever.
Solar farm.
Councillor Grant.
The 3 to 5 years, we didn't apply that to the likes of the Ben Har and Tokawiti sewage schemes. That's a volunteer target rate on that, isn't it?
That one was a wee bit different. It wasn't voluntary. It was, you had to do it.
Yeah, you either had to pay up front or go onto a 25-year loan rate. It's like the Balclutha, when the original Balclutha scheme was put in, it was similar to that. And the rest of the district picked up the other 50% as well, so there was only 50% of the cost that was charged to the properties.
Rightly so.
Thanks for that detail, Sharon. It's really
really.
What we wanted to check, the direction on this one was, the existing ones are clear. We want to keep those. Is that Sharon? The existing ones are, you put it up there?
Correct.
Yeah. And then Jules, you're going to add in what are we looking for in additional, just from our perspective?
Yeah, well, it was wastewater and drainage improvements. I think the other thing to consider is how long do you want to do this, considering we're not going to have a relationship with them regarding water and wastewater in 18 months. Whether you wanted to still, you could do it up to that point. I know that's another decision for you to consider as well. But definitely wastewater and drainage upgrade costs would be something we would want to see there.
Also, certainly Clinton as a group of them would
Water
like
tanks.
a lot of water tanks and pumps for those houses that have got not enough supply on their restricted schemes.
I mean, we can always turn it off after 27, or it might be something that actually negotiated with the CCO. Who knows? Because the issue is still the same. If the CCO doesn't have provisions for what we're offering for our ratepayers, our community, then they have to go commercial and things. So the same issue is still the same issue. If they want to get I&I fixed and all that sort of stuff, it's still going to be the same. So our community will still be under pressure financially, and so that's something that still might be that's attractive. That's right, that we can offer to support our community. So this doesn't necessarily mean that it has to end, but we certainly want to be offering it, I think, for this next financial year, and then at least we can talk about where that goes with the CCO afterwards. And you're not locked in. You can always make a decision for the plan in July 27 to turn it off. So you have an exit if you need an exit, but you've also got an opportunity to say, actually, we can negotiate this and it's still worthwhile.
Was there anything else from the other GMs or Sharon that you've had people inquire about?
We only mentioned surge connection. What about water connection fees? Yeah.
Jules, was there still talk about the backflow restricted farms? Would that be something?
Usually the backflow on farms is the air gap when you're restricted.
There was a talk about being on the boundary though for stopping. That's still not.
We haven't. Well, we sort of do that for special customers.
Yeah.
Does that part of the CTR program?
Not normally.
Right.
That's
Is
right.
there-
I just thought, yeah.
Is there anything that we are missing that we haven't got on there?
Well, that's just why I was checking if there's any other feedback from GMs that if they've had things that have cropped up that people have said we can't afford to do this because this could be a solution to help them.
Sorry, Jules, through you, your worship. I'm just thinking things like home hairdressers, where we need them to have a backflow if they haven't already got one. That's the kind of thing that I would see.
If we have water connection improvements, and that could potentially cover that.
Yeah.
And that could cover that too, Councillor Smith. If we put that in there.
What about the consenting arena, and does anything like that pop up? Consenting, regulatory?
Yeah.
So through you, Chair. Not really. You get the odd person that says, "Oh, that's a bit high," but I guess it's normally in development people expect to pay money, so it's probably not to the same extent as what we discussed today.
Cool.
And we do have that fee reimbursement option still currently around the Tangata House and Land, and technically may still apply. Difference being, of course, it's not the customer paying, it's council actually supporting by reimbursement. But there are those schemes that
you can make that a VTR rather than a grant.
Could be something like that.
Just for community groups.
Yeah, that doesn't. Okay, but if there's nothing else, like the whole idea was that we just wanted to run it by you again, get your agreement that we're going to throw a couple of extras in there. We do need to consult on it. That's the main thing. If you're comfortable with that, we would go ahead.
Do we need a limit, or is it something that would come back? Because we don't usually have hundreds of thousands, do we, Sharon?
The home heating got up quite high, didn't it? Because there's quite a lot of them, but not all in 1 year, over a period of time.
Do we need a limit from Councillor McAtamney's point, from a debt ceiling?
Or a limit per person,
Per application?
per application, or.
Yes, if you've got a $10,000 cost to deal with your I&I problem, we sort of want to make sure they can deal with it.
And 100 of those is $1 million.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're saying approved suppliers.
Yeah, I think.
Just makes it easy if they say, you go to this person, it's not a problem.
How big is that problem, the I&I problem?
Oh,
Of people saying they can't afford it?
There's still quite a bit out there. I mean,
Linda's team's got a pretty good result. There's been lots of reduction. Some
Yeah.
cases it's 100% sorted.
Yeah.
But certainly 2 years ago, there was people going, we just can't afford to deal with this. If there's major re-drainage required, that can be quite expensive. We could have it as an option and we continue to work with people. But certainly, if you look in the last council report, there's been great
So I'm wondering
progress in the area.
how big is the actual problem?
Might be a handful of people, don't know.
6.
In terms of volume, it's not a big debt. The highest volume thing that would relate to debt was definitely the home heating, right? Because that had significant volumes. Everything else is low in terms of numbers, very low. So I don't think they're higher risk in that sense. It's discretionary. We don't have to do it as well. So if we think we've got an issue, we can always, just because we have a rate doesn't mean so you have to approve it and apply it.
And you'd think with the home heating thing, there'd be a rush, but then it would level out, wouldn't it? Because you can't do it twice, 3 times.
Well, we're running a wee bit behind time here, team.
So we're going, the point is to consult, so we can still do further work if we need to for decisions. But if you're comfortable, perhaps we just suggest the direction is that we do put these additions in for consultation and there we go from there. Not the solar.
Can we just confirm what
Yeah, so it's Jules will do it. They're dealing both with the water and the wastewater improvement. But we'll give you the wording later once we do some technical work to make sure it meets the legal requirement.
So is that intended to cover like a tank?
Yep.
Good.
Tank and pumps.
Okay, thank
Right.
you, Your Worship, for keeping us on track.
We've got 15 minutes to smoko, and you know I love smoko.
These might be quite quick. Mike's going to whip through the cross-rec one.
Just a quick update on the Cross Rec Centre. As you recall, council operational funding for that for the last 5 years has been about 55k per year. In December, council approved an additional 20k through that late item. You may recall you also approved up to another 20k, dependent on the outcome of the Recreation Centre's grant application. That was in fact successful, so they don't plan to draw down on that second half or that second 20k that was approved. So that was good. So in terms of what at the moment, the committee has been receiving some really good support from Linda Moore and her team at Clutha Development. They have met a number of times, I believe. They have developed a funding action plan, which basically the aim of that is to improve their cash flow through a number of different mechanisms and just to build up their reserves. And now they're looking at ways, looking to implement that plan. In terms of an annual plan submission and funding, I guess, from council, that the latest update I have is that there's, they've still got a bit of work to be done in that area, as they're still developing their budgets and cash flows, as I said. So they don't have a firm figure yet, and it will just really depend on how successful they are over the next few months in implementing their plan.
So thanks, Mike. So basically what that means for us, in my understanding then, would be no need to do anything in terms of our consulted budget, and we will just wait for submissions to come through as a result. But at least it also sounds positive news around actions occurring to try and increase their cash flow and their funding sources. That's a good thing. Your Worship, that one?
Yeah, I don't know. Would you say their income, what do we give them annually? 55?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, possibly do we be mindful of how do we measure, where did that figure come from?
I think it's a historic number that's just always been
So it's a
the same
historic
about
number,
5
so
years. So
yeah. Personally myself, I reckon we should be looking at it a bit more along a different sort of model instead of a historic number and for the longevity and the viability of the organisation and what it actually means to the district. So I think that our communities might come back with a different story in saying that it's high value to them and we may need to contribute more, but we know who's going to be doing the contributing, and that's our community. So I think a wee bit more work.
But Your Worship, that's what's exactly happening. It's like they came here at a crisis time.
Oh, I realise that, but I mean, moving forward, like, is 55 enough? It could be 85, 95.
Yes, but the point of the funding action plan is that it's always better, isn't it, to in terms of that type of organisation, if they significantly improve the funding available to them, there's less call on the community. So they are absolutely doing the homework to be able to determine what, for longevity purposes, might need to be a public contribution. But the work they're doing, first of all, is to say how much can we lock in, and how much better can we do about getting third-party funding and other things like sponsorship and other bits and pieces. So that's what was missing, and so they're going to be doing that. When they do their submission, it should be based on that sort of approach, and also picking up what you're saying, it should be looking at the long term from any contribution from us. So the point is that nothing we can do now at this point, we don't need to. They're off doing their work.
I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is keep it front of mind moving forward that they might be coming back to us wanting more than 55.
So, Your Worship, I've been part of that, and the funding plan will be finalised next Tuesday.
Right.
So it's been pretty short and sharp with an independent, Linda. The plan is to have 3 years worth of money going forward.
Yeah.
But probably still at this stage relying on council's contribution, whatever that's determined. But yeah, they're going to have something out by next week.
So all I'm raising is keep it front of mind that historic big figure might have to change.
Your Worship, just to add to the conversation, I believe Community Trust of Otago are changing some of their dynamics. So funding is available for operational costs of their site. So that could be a help. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Mike.
So the next one, Your Worship, last one before cup of tea.
Yeah. Okay, so order of magnitude higher again here, but so you'll recall we had a workshop item on this in December. So and we had Hans van der Linden come and speak to you. At that point, we developed a timeline, and the development of that proposed facility wouldn't have occurred until year one of the next LTP. Now, we've been continuing to work with Hans and his team, and in fact, they would quite like to make a start early next year, so as in early 27, which would be in the next annual plan. The reason for that is that they just want to avoid increasing costs around building costs in particular. So, but even if that was to happen, there's still quite a few things to get through for that to actually be achieved. But if they were able to achieve that, then the rates impact would still not be until year one of the next LTP. Yeah. So, and then there's some information there on the slides about where they're at with their designs. They're still working through that. The current price estimate is still 3 million, but that might change as those plans get refined as they're coming in. They still believe they can raise $500,000 externally. I've also until we get that information, we can't really determine accurately what the library costs are versus community centre costs. But yeah, just go back for 1 second. You'll see that there's both those parts, and there's also the shared space, which basically that's toilets and sort of shared meeting rooms and spaces like that. Okay, thanks, Peter. And so that's how that might look with a $2.5 million council contribution, and we've also got the potential ways that could be funded through the UAGC or the local community services rate. Got the rates impact there. If the whole lot was through the UAGC, $14.61. Now, if, for example, if we were to slice that slightly differently, and if there was, say, $2 million was provided through the UAGC or through the UAGC, and $500,000 was 50-50 UAGC and community services. Basically, that would shake down as, so total UAGC $13.15, and the local contribution through that community service rate would be $13.10. That makes sense. Sorry, that's just late information.
The thing that befuddles me most about this is them raising $500,000. I would have thought you could do better than that. So that's the expectation, I know, but $500,000,
I think they've already invested, already raised over $1 million, haven't they?
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah.
and spent.
This is the second stage.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
thank you.
Including
That makes sense.
We've done all the spend up till now. This is the last
I'm with you.
final piece.
And the library wasn't originally part of it.
I see.
Okay.
So, actually, just for like so Rachel and Brendan and anyone else that wasn't too sure, but once again, it's a bit more lack of detail. So we've got a bit more of a journey, please, Michelle.
So this volunteer group, and that's what they are, they've been working for a number of years. The building itself was built by the same designer that built the stadium and the cargo there collapsed. The roof went down. So it's the same sort of roofing structure, and it's very flat in what it's built of. So what they've done over the years is tap out as much as they can, and they've re-roofed all the squash, the gym, the theatre, which was leaking quite bad. And when we have our tour, you'll see what's left to be done. So regardless of whether we pull forward our money for our library, which is a concrete block building that our lovely ladies rush around with their buckets and their tarpaulins over books when it starts to rain, is a building that needs to be gone. So the idea of Harms was, let's not look a wee bit forward and pull forward a bit and add that to the front of the community centre, which finishes that piece of roof, gives it a tidy up. Plus we've got a full community hub for our community there then. And as we all know, these hubs are quite important. This is the last sort of trench that this group can go to, which help with community board as well, because they're not actually shown totally in that picture, but they will be. But yeah, so regardless of whether we pull the library in and thing, that this piece of roof still has to be done. So if it's not picking up the project and moving our community forward, then we're still going to be back around the table. That roof has to be finished.
Thanks for that, Michelle.
I think also, Your Worship, there will be quite a bit of background to it with the actual designs and other bits and pieces at the workshop on the 10th of December. So I think, because the items there, I think they spoke to it over the call. So yeah, you can refer back to it in the documents to have a look at the detail. But I suppose the point is really, again, we're looking at about going out for consultation, even though the impact isn't going to be until year one, obviously. Like everything else, you've got to go and is the project going to proceed or not? So you do have to actually understand the rating impact, and you need to consult on that. So,
are we being a wee bit light at the conservative at the 2.5 mark instead of the original 3?
Yeah, that is a conversation that I've had with Hans, and yeah, I mean they've got a pretty good price, but that may change. They are reasonably confident that they can raise that $500,000 externally. So that's, yes, it might change, and these things have a habit of doing that, but that's the best information we have at the moment.
Right. Cool. No, just asking the question. Other councillors don't get surprises.
Yeah.
Simon.
So we've got the UAGC impact. There is actually another potential option to contribute to year up next, but yeah, I might go there right now. But there's another way to do it too.
I just love you coming in late with all these ideas.
No, it's fine, no, but this is the thing, but this, I believe that this could be a maximum UAGC increase, do something else.
Yeah, anything that, if it increases rates, then we've got a problem in terms of a decision point. But if there are other options that plays around with that, you're entitled to make those decisions. So the main point, I suppose, is the direction that we just can go out for consultation with options associated with this project. That's what we're just looking for from you.
Definitely.
We've got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm in support of this, and I think there's potentially another trick up our sleeve.
Okay. All right. So
is everyone pretty much in favour of the staff carry on?
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. So that would be those items for the morning.
Beautiful. We're 3 minutes early. How's that for getting back on track? Yeah. Hey, just a reminder that the workshop is being live streamed, so. With anyone out there viewing, is anyone out there viewing? Vicky, how many people are watching?
It does come.
I'll watch.
6, no, just weekend
I've got
6.
none here. Yep, we've got 6 people watching via live stream.
Get on.
Right, session 2, annual plan.
Oh, sorry, Pete, good morning.
Steve and Olivia. Or Jane.
All right, I can just do a quick introduction on this. This is really just finalising submissions for our proposed simplifying local government proposal response. You can just, so yeah, we're just seeking direction really as to how we approach this and whether we can move ahead with C and Mayor collectively to finalise the submissions. Broadly speaking, the main points really are, that's the next slide, that from our proposed response, the main points are that council does not believe that an interim CTB model is appropriate or necessary to achieve the desired outcomes of the reforms. We basically believe that the reforms can be achieved, or we're proposing to submit that the reforms can be achieved without requiring an interim CTB model. Mainly the rationale for this is, and Steve might be able to speak a bit more of this as to the discussion with other regional mayors. One of the concerns is really the significant pressure on the mayor and elected members' time if this were to go ahead in the interim period. The mayor would have to become effectively a member of the CTB and undertake all of the decision-making duties as part of the CTB for regional government. It would also mean that probably a lot of work would also be delegated to you guys at a time when you are also having to deal with a number of other reforms such as rate capping and the impact of that on your long-term planning, reforms of emergency management, which is predicted to cost $82.8 million, reforms as we'll discuss subsequently on resource management and a whole host of other things, in addition to long-term planning, annual planning, CCO transition. So that is a huge impact on resourcing. And our proposed response notes that a regional reorganisation plan can be developed without actually necessitating a CTB being put in place as an interim measure. There's no reason that that can't be done under the current model with regional councillors setting out their term, collaborating with territorial authority mayors and central government to do so. So Steve, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that?
Well, only otherwise the full submissions in the agenda, the background papers are in the agenda, so that hopefully was entirely to read. So CTB isn't something you don't understand in that sense. But I think those were the main points. We have discussed broadly, it's broadly similar to other councils. They might be picking up other bits and pieces, but the main thrust of the proposal being, hey, we don't actually think the CTB approach is the right approach. And we need to individually say that ourselves as well if we believe that. Like he says, nothing in the CTB model can't be done through other ways. And the government has already demonstrated through the local water done well process that they can force you to do things and make something happen through legislation. And they can certainly force councils to work with other councils on a reorganisation plan. You don't need a CTB to be told you have to do a plan in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. You've got to do a plan, right? So you're going to do that collaboration anyway because you're going to be required to. We've done that through the local water done well. So that's the thrust of our proposed submission, and we don't have a lot of time. This is really our only chance to get your agreement that generally that's okay with you, or you might want to say something different. But like at the end of the day, a person that carries a lot of weight in terms of submission would be Mayor Martin, because he's the one that's going to be fronting up for this. And although the mayors have talked, Your Worship, I mean, we're assuming the view is aligned with where you're thinking in that, because otherwise we then might need to amend the submission.
Well, I do have an opinion, and it's a very short one. If you want something done, ask busy people to get it done. And I told the chair of the regional council that we're not the ones under review here, that they are. So they need to get their housekeeping in order. But there is, like he's pointed out, with the other implications, that it's going to be quite absorbent for time pressures for everyone. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to your feedback. Just for my feedback with the submission on page 13. I do have a bit of an issue with the allocating of the voting powers that they're proposing. And I don't believe that they should be going on population basis. I pointed out to the Mayor of Dunedin and the Chair of the Regional Council that for me it's more about the environmental footprint, and the Clutha District Council's got a far bigger, nearly twice the size of environmental footprint than Dunedin City Council has, so I don't see why Dunedin City Council should have more voting rights than the Clutha District. That's my only beef. Like, just some quick summaries. The Dunedin City Council is 330,000 hectares, Waitaki 715,000, and Central Otago is 997,000, and Queenstown's 872,000 hectares. So Queenstown with a population of 54,000, Central Otago with 25, Waitaki with 24, and Dunedin with 132. And they've got the smallest environmental footprint. So and the CDC's got 11,800. So we're just small fry, but yet we've still got an environmental footprint.
Just a slight clarification on that, Mayor Martin. So what the government's currently proposing actually isn't necessarily just a population-based model. It's what they call an adjusted population model. As noted in our submission, and has been noted in multiple other submissions as well by other councils, the problem we have actually is we don't know what the adjustment mechanism is. So they're not saying it's going to be a strict what they're initially proposing is not a strict population model. They've recognized that one of the dangers with a population model is that it means why would rural councils even, like, why would small councils even attend? Right? If you're not going to have a voice, why even attend? So they've recognized that, but the issue is we don't know how it's going to be adjusted. We've made that point in the submission itself. Our starting point, I guess, is that we actually just don't think the CTV model is really workable. So we're not engaging in depth in terms of proposing an alternative voting model. We've agreed basically with the government and with Taituara and LGNZ and a host of other councils that basically say, look, there's problems with both. There's problems with a strict population-based model. There's a problem with a strict council-based one vote, one mayor model. There needs to be something workable in between. We don't really think there is. And therefore, this is one of the fundamental problems with the model. And we don't have enough information really to provide feedback because we don't know what the proposed adjustment actually is.
As part of the submission, though, what I'm saying is, do we need to note that we have an issue with either model, whether they go on population or that environmental?
Yeah, we have noted that.
Your worship, we said we agree that there are significant issues with both a population-based voting model, which threatens the voices of rural and smaller communities, and a one mayor, one vote system where a minority of the population of the region could dictate decisions for the entire region. And then while the government is proposing an adjusted population-based model, it's unclear how the commission, the Local Government Commission, could adjust this and whether they would adequately address these issues. And then we go, in our view, the issues with the voting mechanisms further shows that the better approach is to do away with the CTV model.
Yeah, but we don't actually mention environmental footprint, do we? In any of that. And that's what it's all about.
Your worship, we could easily add in a sentence that says, for example, alternatively, environmental footprint. We could do that.
We could add which strengthen the voices of rural and smaller communities who may have a large environmental area within the district.
Highly populated areas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
We'll have more lizards and then we've got parking meters. So that's the point I'm trying to get across to regional council.
Yeah.
And bus stops.
I guess what I'd like to do, and I don't want to take up too much time, is just do a very quick flip through the questions, and because I don't want to read everything out, just if you have any issues, I'll point to which page they're on. If you have any issues with the selections, let me know and we can make adjustments. So background on page 10 of your agenda, you'll see, do you agree to the need to simplify local government? We've at the moment proposed to select agree. Look, at the end of the day, pretty much all councils and all submissions either agree or strongly agree that the current model doesn't work. So we will recognise that. So if you're all okay with agree, we can also do strongly agree, but some free text there. Again, hoping that you've all had a chance to have a read of that. We've just acknowledged the fact that, look, it does need to change. Simplifying local governance, on page 11, we've said we strongly disagree with replacing regional councillors with a CDB. Again, it's if the ultimate goal for us is regional reorganisation to achieve efficiency and lower costs and greater representation of district and regions, an interim CTB, in our view, just adds another layer of an interim step. Why don't we just do regional representation? Like, why don't we just do a regional plan? That's our view. We've set out the reasons why we think so. A lot of it's on capacity and timing. What level of Crown participation decision making do you prefer? That's on page 12. Now, we haven't made a selection here because our view is basically we don't think we should go with a CTB model. I will note that from the submissions I've read, there's somewhat wide-ranging views on this. For example, in ORC's actual submission, they also disagree with replacing regional councillors during this term. They've actually submitted Crown Commissioner instead of a CTB. I think part of the rationale for a bit of concern from certain local authorities and territorial authorities and regional authorities are we kind of, it's this question of similar to what happened with water, right? You have certain criteria, you try to meet those criteria, and the government ends up telling you, well, you haven't fit within our model. And part of what we've kind of, the rationale for us not selecting here is we don't really want to get into that debate right now. We're just saying we don't think a CTB is workable. So I don't know whether, allocating voting power, we've kind of already discussed, again, mainly due to the fact that we disagree with the CTB, we've just selected neither agree nor disagree. Cross-boundary issues, this is on page 14, we've just said it, look, because the Clutha District Council doesn't actually represent any cross-boundary, we're not Waitaki or anyone that has a cross-regional concern, we're basically not submitting on that. But we note that there are concerns that they need to kind of work through. I will note that a number of submissions, Taitara, LGNZ, and also a number of submissions across councils have noted that when we look at regional reorganisation plan, we should look at it not necessarily purely tied to current regional boundaries and currently how territorial authorities are divided. And the rationale is it unfairly limits councils to take those decisions forward. Feel free, by the way, to stop me if you disagree with anything. Improving local government, again, we're kind of just saying neither agree nor disagree for the same.
So yeah. I just wonder, with that one in particular, since we don't support CTBs in the first place, would it actually probably be better to say strongly disagree because we don't support CTBs doing regional reorg plans? We support CTBs.
Sure. Yeah, we could do strongly disagree there. Yeah, we noted in the free text that we just do not, we do not think CTB is required for regional reorganisation. Now, I do want to point to the subsequent free text question here, which is what do you think about the criteria for assessing regional reorganisation plan? The criteria is set out currently in the proposal. You might have seen it was presented previously, just in the table. It's set in kind of in the local order done well way of a couple of things you might need to consider. What we've noted here, and has been noted by other councils as well, is we think central government need to set clearer criteria. So if they want something done, they should put it in writing And then we can submit on it when the legislation comes, and then we can act upon it, as opposed to what kind of happened with local water done well, which was criteria, shifts, changes, and then you get into the end and basically councils got slapped on the wrist because, they wanted a form of amalgamation, but they weren't willing to put it in writing. And what we're saying here is we need clarity, because otherwise we're going to spend time and money creating a regional reorganization plan that ends up potentially not even fitting the criteria because we don't know.
As you say, we've been through that.
Yeah.
So,
Can I just come back to one thing? So, our problem with the CTB is such as that we feel we haven't got the capacity to work in.
Yeah.
Could it still work under another guise? Say independence.
As opposed, in what way?
Well, we're saying that as they've written it, the mayors will create it and be part of it.
Yeah.
We're saying we've got the capacity to do that. But could it be other people or other independent? Could it be another group that board?
Yeah, I think
Construction.
potentially. I mean, your other option wouldn't be a territorial board, right? So the idea of a combined territorial board is that it represents territorial authorities. The other options they presented, and which some people have submitted in support of, is we don't have the CTB, it's just Crown Commissioner. Or you could have potentially, and that doesn't mean necessarily one commissioner, right? It could be an independent commission. I guess for council, then there's a question of, if your option is to create a regional reorganization plan between yourselves and district councils and regional councils around the region, as opposed to potentially other bureaucrats or other specialists maybe coming in and talking to you and taking your views into account, but they have all the decision-making power. There are benefits of both, like on the one hand, we wouldn't have to go through some of the painful processes we went through for local government, but local water done well. On the other hand, you are then battling with both the commissioners / bureaucrats, but also potentially with other councils around the region in terms of whose voice gets heard by the commissioners.
Yes and no, because there is another point that if they do say the mayors have to go in there, as councillors, we may have to battle with some of the mayors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even our own one.
Yeah.
That's why we don't like the CTB, right?
Yeah. That's what we're proposing to say.
And the alternative is the current local government commission, which doesn't work.
But whatever reform we do, we will have to, at some point, we will be battling with someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Which is why, what he's making the point is clarity around what is the outcome you're looking for. Because local water done well didn't help at all, did it? It said certain things, and then there's all these different views on a scale around what you could do to achieve what was necessary, and that just caused a whole lot of problems. So what we're saying is be a bit more helpful and be a bit more different in terms of that criteria, so we know what we're supposed to be walking into when we're walking into it.
And what we're kind of asking there is, when you produce the legislation that's going to support this, and we'll hopefully have another cut at submitting on that, right? Have these issues that are currently murky sorted out so that, if, for example, government comes and says, we expect all of the territorial authorities around New Zealand to organise into 15 unitary councils, hypothetically, then at least that's something that we can assess and go back and say, that doesn't work for us for this reason. Right now, we do not have the clarity of criteria, the clarity of voting power, the clarity of how even a CTB would function. And on the basis of this, all we can really say, from our view anyway, is that this is just not workable.
You wish. Sure. I was going to say, but to go down that path, aren't you circumnavigating the consultation process? What's the point in having a consultation process if the end destination has already been decided? So you're actually, it's a chicken and an egg thing, isn't it? So we want more direction, but the things, if they come and say, this is what we want, what's the point in the consultation? That's the way I would look at it.
Yeah. But you say, an example of that is, which we all know, we went through the process, local water done well. They put in legislation, didn't they, a particular process you had to follow. And so government set that process and then said, oh, by the way, once you go to a certain point, you then need to consult back with your community. So that put it all onto councils, didn't it? Right. So we got it on the receiving end about having to consult with our people on something the government sort of said. We all saw where that ended up. So what we're trying to say is, if you want to go down a pathway, legislate it so that the consultation is associated with the legislation rather than dropping a council into it in terms of consultation around things, right? All we're doing then is working on what the government is directing. So that's the point. Not that they necessarily will do that, but we're just making a point that we would prefer not to go down a local water done well process.
And to Councillor Frost's point, how consultation with communities may occur under a commissioner-only led model, which would be a central government-led model, versus a local government-led model, may appear very different, right? So all we're saying is we need clarity and details, but we just don't think the CTB as it is proposed is workable. Yeah.
Your Worship, I think the end result's very clear, what they want, but it's how we get there.
And then, finally, just page 16, Treaty Waitangi and Māori representation. All we've kind of said is Kutu District Council represents the interests, respects the interests of Māori as tangata whenua and the importance of ensuring Māori representation. We just don't see how it's addressed at all. And again, it's the same thing that we've presented on. It's just lack of clarity. Right? What are we meant to make out of this proposal right now? So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm happy to take any adjustments. I've noted Mayor Martin's adjustment on adding the environmental footprint, noted that in the selection on page 15, question 6, we're going to change it to strongly disagree. Is there any other adjustments or amendments you guys would like to discuss?
Sentence adjustment.
Yeah, environmental footprint, yeah.
No further questions? Thank you for that.
Awesome. Just confirming then the direction is that we will work with Mayor Martin and Steve to finalise the submissions, and the deadline is the 20th of February.
Thank you. Welcome, Olivia.
Good morning. So hello everyone. Today I'll be discussing our proposed draft submission, the Natural Environment Bill and the Planning Bill. And this is actually due tomorrow to be submitted, so I will be doing that tomorrow, so I do require direction today. I'd like to point out there's probably a few key differences compared to what Ye mentioned before in terms of what this is. So we've actually got two really large bills that are massive that we've had to consider, which is different to what the simplifying local government is about. And in terms of the questions that we've been asked, so while it was a bit more prescriptive in terms of the simplifying local government, this one more asks for any matters of discussion we want to put forward to them, as well as any recommendations. So it's less about saying yes or no, it's more about providing feedback at this time. So that's just a distinction I'd like to make there. Now, in putting the report I've put together, I've spoken to a lot of councils, so Otago, Southland planning managers have regular hui and discuss these, and so I'd say that the councils in Otago, Southland are pretty much all on the same page. And what I've based this off today as well is the Taitoda draft submission, because that basically gave a really good overview of what we would like to be following as well, but it also saves us a lot of time and resources about basically reinventing the wheel if someone's already done that mahi for us. So I'll give a brief summary of the bill. So you guys may know that we've had our Resource Management Act since 1991, so that's 34 years. And we're now going through RMA reforms, which proposes to split it into two. So that'd be the Natural Environment Bill and the Planning Bill. And so the Natural Environment bill would focus on environmental limits, and then the planning bill is more looking at development, basically. So there's a lot of trying to streamline processes here. And we understand that the RMA does need to change, and I don't think anyone denies that. But the points that we've raised, that Taitoura has raised, particularly in our submissions, looks more about the process of what we're doing at the moment in terms of legislation. So, for example, we've identified, and Taitoura has too, that there's quite a few gaps and inconsistencies, rush timeframes, there's some interim challenges, there's a big issue around te tiriti and whether that's been followed, alignment with other reforms, and basically the funding as well, because it's anticipated it'll be about 186 million for these reforms to happen. And that's quite a lot of money, and it's not actually been identified who's going to pay for that yet. So that's the crux of what we're talking about. I'll remind you guys as well that we do have a very permissive district plan anyway, and we do tend to be quite a pro-development council, unlike some other councils where it may be more difficult to get a consent. We're actually comparatively reasonably easy here. So I guess I'll take the report as read and see if we've got any questions about anything.
Questions for Olivia, team?
Olivia, there was just, I just had a question that in terms of the actual wording of the submission. The comments relating to the Mana Whenua one.
Yeah.
When we discussed it, I knew that the agenda had already gone out, so we were making changes to it at that particular time. But other discussion we had was that, the comments associated with that were comments derived from, where did it come from?
Te Rūpū
Rūpū.
Yeah.
So the point we wanted to make actually in the submission is that we were just as we were saying, we agree with Taitoura or LGNZ's comment, submissions, because they wrote big submissions. This came from Te Rūpū. We just need to represent that actually this is supporting the Te Rūpū viewpoint, because I did note that there was a number of provisions relating to the Mana Whenua side, but really it was just being brought in from the Te Rūpū aspect, and we need to be clear that we were just supporting that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's clear, thank you.
As opposed to this is specifically all come individually from us. So I thought I'd just make that point. When you look at the submission, you can see that you probably need to put that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a question. Where did it get to? There was a lot of questions raised about potential compensation for people if they didn't get consents. Councils might be liable. Where's that all ended up?
Yeah, good question, through your worship. So regulatory relief, that's what that's called, and it is in the Taitoura submission. There's not been much information about what that looks like, but that is one of the key concerns of other Otago Southland councils, is saying, so if we deny consent, then how does that work in terms of costs? How are we funding that when council will potentially be liable for that? So to answer your question, not a huge amount has happened with that, because we've only got the preliminary of what we're looking at. We don't know any more details, and that's what we're submitting on. But it is a really big concern amongst other councils.
It's potentially massive.
Yeah. So I did see it in Taitoura's one. I can't see it right now, but it's definitely in there, and so we'll be discussing that. Sorry, Yay?
Yeah, I might add just a little bit of context now. So as it's currently proposed, regulatory relief, I think one of the issues is that the scope is quite wide, and as identified in the planning bill. So they basically, at the moment, put that regulatory relief may be available for anything where you're imposing controls to heritage, significance of body, outstanding natural landscapes, areas of high character, and that's quite wide, which I guess one of the concerns that many councils have pointed out is your starting point then is your starting point kind of really planning consenting, or is your starting point trying to avoid liability? Because any controls that you put in place that could impede on the rights of potential private landowners is potentially subject to regulatory relief. So the scope is quite wide, even though the details potentially relief themselves.
Thank you, Yay.
So is any, sorry, Michelle.
Sorry, Olivia. So when it comes, I remember quite a long time, we did a thing on natural environments in our district. We really have got very little. We seem to document that we had very little. Will that change?
I think it's as Jules through the chair, the outstanding natural landscapes or identifying special features. It was, I think, back in 2013, was it, that we were looking at that? Yeah.
I do remember doing it, thinking, oh, well, you know, how beautiful what we have, and we have a big environmental impact, but we actually don't.
Yeah, from recollection, and
something to do with there was a piece of the Blue Mountains, I think.
Yes.
And that was about it. And I was like, oh, okay.
I'd potentially have to come back to you on that one, Michelle, but from recollection, there were still some, maybe not, there's different, this is very nerdy planning jargon, but there's like different levels of way of looking at things. So I don't think it was outstanding natural landscapes that we were, I think maybe being potentially at understanding natural landscapes, but there are a few other criteria. I think there still were some areas that could potentially be protected. We've still been we picked up that review, and in lieu of the district plan not being able to continue that review because government has put a stop to all district plans, we've actually been going through that to check where we're at so that we're ready when we have to talk about spatial planning and the next steps of the councils, that we've actually got a bit more documentation about looking to protect that. But that sort of will roll in as well, not necessarily under, it will be under this bill, but probably I'd say more the details of what that looks like would be more when we actually start writing the combined regional plan about how that's affected, less so in this aspect here. Yeah. So it's another layer down.
You're talking significant natural areas, and that got put on hold.
Yeah.
That's right.
Roger.
I just got a question about that. Just bearing in mind that I know that there's a stage 2 of the wind farm being built out towards Mahanarangi, what's on the fast track legislation. So as I understand it, where that boundary line is between the Clotha District and the Dunedin City Council, one side of the line it's a significant natural landscape and on the other it is not. So is there an expectation for neighbouring councils to have a similar standard, I suppose is the right word, on the same piece of ground? So, you know, one side of the hill is and one isn't, but it actually all looks the same. If that makes sense.
Through the chair, so that level of detail, it's a good question you asked, but it's not really considered in these bills. And it might come out, it might be months or maybe another year or so till we get to that level of detail. It's still so, I guess, one thing to understand is that legislation can be quite detailed, but also very high level. And underneath legislation is when you get different planning documents that support and have to adhere to the above legislation, but that's normally when the details figured out. So we don't know the detail at this stage, but you're right with Mahanarangi as well, and it's going through a fast track, which is quite a different process to a normal regional consent process that we do in-house anyway. So yeah, I take your point.
Through you. And to go further with what Olivia said, another agenda that is being coming forward is spatial planning at a regional level, and necessarily what you're talking about would be rationalised in that process. Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
Yep. Thank you. Can I just come back to that compensation one before? So are we going to have a position on that? Are we going to say yeah or no?
Through the chair, so it's already raised in Taitura's submission, which we are basically endorsing, but we can definitely put it in as a clear point.
They say no.
That they had issues with it also.
Just issues, or that we're not prepared to go? It's got to be more defined as to.
We can do it more defined for our submission.
No, they will still be Taitura.
Yeah.
We'll be looking to define it more on their submission as to what.
Yes. I would have to go through the submission. It's quite a big submission, but I could.
It's a real can of worms.
It is a can of worms. I guess what you're wanting is to ensure that we've got it in our submission some way. And I don't think there's any issue with us making it clear. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Just thinking, there's no harm. I mean, I know it's got to be done today, but we basically, used the approach that we support Taitura's submission. They'll have a submission aspect in some form against that provision. But the point of this is to say, well, okay, we're saying a few things here, but we might throw in a particular point of concerns specific to us. Olivia could write a paragraph easy enough for there.
Yeah.
That's what we want, just to reinforce that point. Absolutely can do that, right? That's achievable. If you want us to do that, very happy to do that.
Because it'll just take one legal case somewhere in New Zealand.
Sure.
That has been developed and put down and they'll be.
Right.
Yeah, clear, thank you.
Everyone happy for Councillor McIntyre to get that in there?
Yeah. And moving on from that, so is everyone else pretty much happy with Olivia's good work she's done here on this? We've just pushed the go button for Olivia. And
Thank you. So for clarity, I'll make the changes that Steve mentioned, that reflecting that Te Rewhitaia, as we support that. And also about the regulatory leave, I'll put a paragraph in about that.
Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right,
Next session.
Session number 3.
Right. Okay, Your Worship, so this is where we again remember we picked some stuff up from the previous workshop. There were those 4 items we're working on. Joyce has done some homework. We'll actually give it to you over lunchtime, so you can digest it with lunch, and we'll come back after lunch and go through those options for the rural water scheme modelling. So we did those, and now we're picking up matters arising since that workshop. So this is where staff have gone away and started to relook at the budgets, and so the consequences of staff approach. At the end of the session, there is the bit that says, well, staff's looked at this, and we've got the bit there that says, well, you asked a lot of questions, we provided a lot of information, and that session then is for the elected members to come back and discuss, debate, direct, whatever, if there's to be any other subsequent changes from your perspective. That's right, so you have that opportunity there. Okay, so the first thing which drives actually quite a bit in that is that just recently there's been discussions with local government funding agency personnel, and then subsequently with a member of the DIA around concerns that our funding agency, which is therefore very concerning to us, concerns that they've expressed at the trend of deficits in previous years. So we know that the council has had a number of deficits and the quantum of the deficits. And although staff are discussing it with LGFA, and we're still going back with them in terms of answering some of the questions, that even though we have reasons for decisions that have been taken and how the deficits occurred and what was known and things like that, aspects of deficits that are balance sheet as opposed to cash related side of things, all that sort of stuff. There was an expectation provided to us that the council should be looking to reduce deficits or eliminate deficits in the future. Now that actually is something that we should have as an objective as a result anyway, but it does sort of colour and provide background in terms of what we've got to be careful of around decisions we may or may not take around debt, loans, all this sort of stuff, that we don't take actions to increase the scale of deficits, and we bear in mind the deficit situation. So that's the first thing. And then just for our own purposes, when we're talking about deficits and things, what are we actually talking about? So there was last year's deficit was $32.8 million, which is a huge amount. We talked about this in the discussion of the annual report. The budgeted deficit was 12.3 million around about. So the issue was perhaps not so much that we had a $12 million deficit. It was that it had gone from 12 to 32, and I think proportionally it was probably one of the biggest movements in the country as a result. So that's where LGFA was coming from. But the start point is, where did the $12 million come from in the first place, the deficit? So that really came from, using debt to subsidise rates. So remember when we first talked about the LTP, we might have been at 40% rates as a consequence of all those decisions associated with the backtracking around Three Waters. And we actually consulted with the public And the decision was that we weren't going to put a 40% rate rise, we were going to subsidise it with debt over a period of time. So that is reflective that if you subsidise it with debt, you obviously are not covering your expenditures as a result from your revenues. Therefore, 7.4 million of that 12 budgeted was because of that sort of debt situation. And the other part of it is that if you're not fully funding Three Waters, if you're not fully funding depreciation, there is that aspect that feeds into deficits as well. So that's where that 12 million started. So the next one, please, Pam. So then we are talking about actions to reduce the deficits, and so these sequence really relates to where the movement from the 12 to the 32 came from. So there's a whole range of these things here, and so actions to reduce deficits is what staff have looked at to look at how we might need to address those things. So one of the issues was that our rating income was under budget by 1.1 million, which is not normal because you would expect if you rate, the units, this is what you should be getting in terms of rates. But there was a couple of actions we took that are listed there, but they are one-off to be recovered over time. So we do not expect to be under recovering rates moving forward. So we need to be very careful that we're on top of that. Secondly, there was the $2 million less than budgeted from the NZTA, and that's because we didn't do all the work as budgeted, but which is part of a 3-year program. And Donna and I have had a chat, haven't we, Donna, that we wanting to make sure that isn't something that continues, because we do need to be spending, and certainly for at least the last year it'll be spent. So we won't have that. We won't have that revenue not coming in. And then there was a loss of disposal of 3.4 million relating to water assets. These are balance sheet related side of things. The assets are not sold, they're just abandoned. It's not a cash transaction, but it's an example of how you could get figures moving up pretty quickly that are not necessarily budgeted, and they just affect the balance sheet as opposed to cash. There was also a reasonably large waste deficit, and there's been a waste deficit for a number of years where we haven't really matched the activity to the costs and the revenue. And we said we needed to fix that for this next annual plan, and Donna and the team have done a lot of work, and in that section there, you'll find that we've been able to, we're relatively successful that whilst the budget isn't going to necessarily change, what we can conclude is that we won't create a deficit in that annual plan. So that's a positive thing in terms of that's not going to contribute to a deficit. IT deficits part of the annual plan budget. So the idea is that deficits that occurred are being budgeted out by budget increases. Yes, it's a budget increase, but it is being budgeted out. Consultation deficits, again, there are some budget increases within the baseline, but also we've indicated there's quite a bit of reduced use from where we went through during crisis time, when we were using consultants just about all the time to try and to get us through compliance and other bits and pieces. Three Waters operational expenditure was higher than budgeted. That's that known issue. Linda's done a lot of work around that. There's some separate paper around budget changes there to look at that issue. And then the depreciation, which was a huge movement, $12 million movement. That was a big chunk of that 32 mil, and a big chunk of that difference. That was due to a rating revaluation. The LGFA was concerned about that, querying that, because of the size of it. I think they said it was one of the largest proportionate movements in revaluation in the country. So that's being reviewed.
How often is that done, Steve? Has it been a long time since it's been done?
It's assessed annually through you, Your Worship. However, if it's moved more than a certain amount, we have to do a full revaluation. So, yeah, it's just about done annually, isn't it, Donna? Just because of how things have been moving.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct. It is done annually, and then following that appreciation value, we actually asked our professional service provider to actually go around the district and determine what we believe could be a more realistic, useful life associated with our reseals program.
So those are a number of those things that we need to go back to the LGFA over in terms of what we're doing, but it does lead us into our understanding, better understanding of changes that we are looking to make to the budgets this year. But I think the point is we do have to be careful around and being very considerate around what deficits we provide for this year and make some improvements in that space. Okay, so moving to the next bit then, which is, okay, well, some of these things we've talked about, we're making some changes. So now this is where staff are proposing some changes to what the workshop outcome was. So the first one around this, keep going, please. So there'll just be some outcomes. So 3 waters. So this is, you'll remember I said there were certain areas that we needed to review. 3 waters expenditure, because it was causing deficits. Waste, because it was causing deficits, we need to deal with those. It's 2 big areas. And so these are 2 of these things we're bringing to you. Remuneration was the other one. Linda, please. Sorry.
Welcome, Linda.
Hi, thank you. Just a minor correction on the slide. The second line, which has reviewed and increased, proposed to reduce by 415, should be reduced to 415k. So that's
my fault.
Difference.
I've totally with that.
I had it right and someone else changed it, but that's okay.
There's a rule.
So a further breakdown in the paper you've got. So this is really looking at our OPEX budget. So initially, when we reviewed that, I looked at what I believed I needed to operate the business and was looking for 1.75 million. Have now reduced a number of lines, and the paper that you've got separately, which looks something like that, with the green headings, showed the lines where we were looking to what the differences were and where the 1.753 was made up. So I've reviewed those lines, and on page 3 of your attachment, looking now to reduce that difference to another 415,000. So a reduction really of 1.337. And there's 2 specific categories that's really looking across. One is that non-routine expenditure, and that is one that is, even though it's non-routine, routinely runs at a deficit. And that's the budget that we use for things that break. So it's non-routine because we don't expect it to happen. So it's all our repairs, pumps, blow up and we need them serviced, all that type of thing comes out of that budget. It's also where a lot of our contractor costs sit as well. So our actuals for last year was 5.57 mil, and we started this year the baseline of 4.227. And that first review, I was looking for 5.5 to try and be probably more realistic. Now looking to seek just an increase of 272,000 in that from that baseline and take it to 4.5. Acknowledging that that's still significantly less than our actuals from last year. So that's where we need some council direction. But in saying that about that particular category, we do have some planned actions. One of those is to look to move the contract type to measure and value to try and get more certainty about some repair costs. And we're also looking to do some changes around the way that we're tracking some of the backwash waste from 2 of our plants and using contractors to do that. So it's not, I'm not saying that 1.1 is going to materialise. We will be doing our best over the year to try and reduce that potential gap.
Yeah. So just bear in mind, so what Linda's saying is that what you have in the budget baseline for the expenditure and what's sitting in the 19% could be reduced by $1.3 million, right, which is a reasonable chunk in terms of percent movement. Could be reduced. The risk, sorry, 3% is quite a substantive change, right? But there's a risk associated with that, obviously, that despite whatever Linda does, some proportion of that 1.1 million in that non-routine could still be overspent. And the intent there, if we were going to take the relief of the 3%, the intent would be that whatever deficit occurs from there would be loan funded and would be put to the CCO as a consequence of that. But, you know, under the issue of the deficit sort of questioning, it does contribute potentially to a deficit, but it's going to be nothing like what we have been routinely seeing in Three Waters. But, you know, and you might say, well, why don't we go 50-50 or something and just split the difference and put a little bit more in there. What you're doing is you're just reducing that reduction. The 1.3 million could be reduced to, you know, 800, 900, becomes a 2% drop or something like that. Reduces a little bit more of the risk of the deficit. So you can do that. So just bear in mind those are the choices. That's just in total, because the other one isn't such a big deal, is it, Linda? Another thing we did was...
Yeah, so planned maintenance, which is obviously we're directing the contractor to go and do work. And that is primarily on the network. We would do less of that work. So the team has been instructed to this year spend all of the available budget and on the basis that they will only have half of it next year. And those are things like we have to go and check fire hydrants, the flow and the pressure and things, valves, a lot of stormwater drains that need cleaning out and that type of thing. So we'd be looking to do less of that.
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
And then it transfers. So these are things that have been looked at. Now you might disagree. I mean, what we're saying is the baseline of 19% has all the first cut, has it all in there. We're proposing some reductions to that. There are risks associated with it and some consequences, but and a need for you to tell us where you're wanting to go with it. But that is an opportunity to reduce some of that rating impact.
So we've got actuals from last year, last financial year, and then we've got projection of spending less on non-routine. Where are we at currently on this year, as far as our budget goes? Sort of 7 months in, so.
I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they were in
We did report in the
but we don't break it down. So I can certainly get back to you with that figure this afternoon.
We're obviously definitely overspending again this year.
Yeah.
Not to the extent we have. Right? So it's been like this, it is coming down, but it is still an overspend this year as reported.
Question there, Linda. When we say non-routine, like the stormwater drains, I know for a long time they weren't cleaned out, and then we did a lot of work. Did they ever get caught up, or are we going to have another flood season and be caught unawares again, and next thing we're back to square one again? That's the only trouble when we start chopping these things.
Through your worship, I don't believe we were caught up. But we've certainly paid some attention to the ones that we know, yes.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor McCrosty, any water issues down there in your corner?
But no.
Your Worship, we're looking for some
direction.
We're throwing some ideas there.
Yeah.
Sorry, another silly question. If we have where the drains do get blocked and it's caused by flooding, have we got another mechanism that we can use the flooding thing to tidy them up, or
Through your worship,
funding for that side rather than? I know it sounds a silly thing, but I mean, I just know flooding just does people really badly, and it's like.
So through your worship, if there was a stormwater drain that was blocked and we needed to go and do something about that, that would come out of that non-routine.
Right.
So the planned maintenance budget is used for a program of work that we direct, but we would have to respond to something like that, and it would come out of that non-routine budget.
Could be called reactive maintenance.
Yes.
Right. So we're not saying stop non-routine expenditure. Right? We're saying we're going to do some work to try and reduce the cost by being smart about things, right? In that sense. But it doesn't stop, the jobs still have to be done, they're still going to get done. The risk we're saying is that if you don't fund it through what's in the baseline, there'll be some potential deficit at the end of the year. That's all we're saying.
There's some pretty good hard work gone on there, Linda, that you've done here. I hope it works out for you, because there's nothing worse when a plan doesn't come together, but no, well done.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'd like to support your comments. Also, I like what the CEO has mentioned, is maybe looking at a 2% reduction and having that wee bit of extra contingency. So we're sort of hedging our bets a little bit, if that makes sense.
So what was it? What's every 1% again?
Is it about 400,000 or just under, Sharon?
490.
Okay.
Yeah. So effectively, you could put another 500,000 into the non-routine expenditure.
Yeah.
And still achieve around about a 2% reduction from the thing, right? And that would hedge your bets a bit around that, and with what Linda's also proposing, it might get a lot closer, if not meet it. We could do that. That's your call.
I wouldn't call it hedging our bets, I'd call it another weather event. That should get rid of it, wouldn't it? Right, I can't.
I don't know,
Hit us with it.
Wow.
Wow.
Probably just reality. I don't think we can afford to actually cut any of the budget. I don't think we're. Not, it's just the reality of it. You know, we all see our boil water notices, we all see our breakdowns, we all see there's constant emails that flood weekly. The network's not getting better. So that's all non-routine expenditure, the breakages. I can't, I think it's, yeah.
Well,
it's a shame. I want to reduce the rates, obviously.
That's what I'm talking
I
about.
want to reduce the impact of the rates increase, without a doubt. But reality is, we're talking three waters here, and we're not.
I'd argue that our network is getting better. Otherwise, why do we spend $20 million on Silpec, Belmore, and $10 million go to Waiholder? The network must be getting better. Otherwise, we're putting all that money in a big hole.
Councillor McTim.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Linda, some of the savings you're looking at are doing that non-routine expenditure differently from how you
Yes, through your
engage
worship,
with
that
the
is correct. So
contract.
changing the contract
So that's
model, which the contract provides for, so we don't need to renegotiate. We just have to enforce that component. Yeah.
So Linda's proposed some minor bits and pieces in there that have made a difference. I mean, perhaps we should provide a challenge to Linda and her team, though, like perhaps reducing it by 250, because there is the challenge around doing things differently, as opposed to providing a full budget as per what actuals, and test or challenge the do it better area. So picking up on Councillor Catherwood saying we've got to do certain things. The other thing is let's not over budget for something, particularly when we've got some challenges. So we could certainly non-routine. We could just reduce it to down 250 from what was there. That's a valid option you can do. And I'm assuming that, the planned maintenance, like the previous year, we had a low amount. We made a decision on that. This year, we thought we better catch up. So we said, spend the whole budget. Make sure you're doing that. So we're almost like cyclical. Okay, well, next year we're proposing to do sort of half again. So basically doing it over a 2-year period in that sense, or spreading it out longer. So do you have any particular problems? I know you said Three Waters, Councillor Catherwood, but do you have any particular problems with the planned maintenance suggestion?
Planned maintenance you can control. So non-routine is where we're getting ourselves caught out year in, year out, isn't it? So I don't have a problem with the planned maintenance because you can plan it.
So if we suggested,
you've got a budget and you've got a fair idea, it's chopping.
So if we suggested, put some rigor in, like some testing into the environment by saying, okay, pull off 250, then it's still going to make a difference. With the additional changes that Linda's got there, we'll still make a reduction. Would that be
around?
Yeah. So the way for Sharon, because Sharon's got to do the looking at it, right? At the moment, at the moment we were looking at 1.3 million. But that included a reduction of 1.1 million from non-routine expenditure, right? So we've reduced that to 850 million. And we include the reduction of the planned maintenance side of things. So we should end up with a figure, I'm not going to do it on top of my head, but we just need to make sure that Sharon knows what she's talking about when we're dropping it.
So
yes, you're still looking at savings on the first one of 800,000 plus 250,000.
Yeah, so 850.
No, reducing it to 850.
Reducing it to 850.
Reducing the saving to 8. At the moment, we've got proposing 1.1.
You change that to 800, so it'd be $300,000 reduction. Is that right? I don't think we should.
So you still believe you can save 800,000? That's what we're saying.
No, it's the other way around. We think we can save 250,000 off it.
And yet Linda's come to us with that suggestion. She's basically backing herself to say that we can do that. And you're just saying no.
No. Linda, when we say Linda, she's right here. But what we said was, we're proposing the first through second review, drop it to instead of 5.5 million, it was going to go to 4.5 million.
Correct.
When the actuals are sitting at 5.57.
Yeah.
We said that Linda can make some savings, but it's going to be nowhere near the savings necessary to meet what's going to end up being a reasonable sized deficit. Right? So we weren't saying to her that you're going to make 4.5, Linda. There's no way she's going to do that with any savings she's making. Right? So
don't underestimate me.
Well, that's what I was hoping.
We'll be trying.
That's the attitude. I love that attitude.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a team effort, but
There is a risk of being a deficit.
Yeah.
And then we talked to Councillor Catherwood and saying, I think we've got to be a bit careful and realistic about the actuals and things. Three Waters is Three Waters. We talked about the split, where I said you go 50-50 between that side of things as an option. Again, the suggestion then is that still actually going to be sufficient, or should we be Three Waters is Three Waters and be a bit closer to that? And all I was doing is saying, well, let's not put it at 5.5, which is close to the actuals. Let's put some rigor into it, so it does test and challenge Linda. His question is to what degree. That's the only thing we're discussing.
Yeah. We've got to chase something.
Yeah.
And going,
Well, that's my thought.
and heading forward to Southern Waters.
Well, where are we at to the proportion of the financial year this year? That would give you a good indication.
Yes, but nothing, Linda's put nothing in place yet for what she wants to change.
Yeah.
In terms of measuring value and things like that in place for this year.
Right, but a direction for Linda, please.
Well, I've said what I think.
Someone said what he thinks. Thanks,
Just the
Lee,
level.
thanks. Anyone else got anything to add? Larry? Bruce? Cheryl? Rachel?
Okay, so I'll say to you, Linda there in that box says second review proposing 4.5 million. So we want to know, are you agreeing to putting it at 5 million or 5,250,000? Noting that all based on the actuals is at 5.57, and the first review is sitting at 5.5 million. So that's in the baseline. 5.5 million is in the baseline now. I'm just because otherwise I don't get a direction from you.
Yeah, come on,
So
let's take it.
is it 5 or 5.25?
Bring bids up. I'll go low then on the first bid. I'll go 5. And people can.
5. 5.
Yeah, that's what I said, wasn't it?
Okay, well, that sounds like the majority.
Yeah,
So,
Councillor Cathwood, what do you think? 5?
Well, you already know what I think.
No,
You'll end up with a deficit again. So
So,
we're
give
going to
us a number.
So what I'm saying is that you're going to end up with a deficit.
No, propose a number then.
Keep it at 5.5.
Give it 5.5.
I think we've got a majority at 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Sharon, are you right? We've got the figures there. We're keeping the other things that have been proposed, and we've got a new figure for that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Good work.
Sharon?
It's 500 on one plus the 250?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Donna.
Right.
So this is the next area that's always creating a deficit, which we want to fix. Donna.
Thank you.
There's some good news. A lot of work's being done.
So good morning, everybody. So through the worship. So I've got a detailed report, which is in the public excluded section later on through today. But just as a high level, as you're all aware, the solid waste operations became part of my portfolio last month. Prior to Christmas, Steve requested that I start looking into the operational budgets and find opportunities for improvement, which I have done. And from the work, which, to be quite frank, I've lived and breathed solid waste for about the last 2 months. I know an awful lot about it now, which is great. I'm very confident that in the 26-27 year we can be cost neutral. This year, when I looked at the current projections, it's currently projecting to still have about a $500,000 deficit. However, I am confident that, and again, I can discuss this in more detail in public excluded, that I can at least crawl back at least 50% of that this year as well. So the areas that I'll be discussing in detail later on today is the maintenance contract, the landfill cell airspace capacity, and the findings associated with that. The fact that we won't need to require to transfer material out of the district, which is one of the areas of concern, which we thought may have increased the deficit even higher for next financial year, and changes to how we're looking at doing the temporary transfer station.
So, yeah, apart from the detail that's going to be looked at, the main point is that we believe the budget is sound now and that it will be sufficient for next year, such that we don't believe we'll be contributing to the deficit. Next.
Thank you, Don.
Linda again.
So this is, we've done a review of the structure within Three Waters and identified a number of positions that we believe we can go without, I guess, or put more workload and spread it across the team. And so that's resulted in a saving or a reduction of 270,000 by not filling a number of roles, including from a management role right down to an operator role.
Yeah, and you got to remember that when we transitioned without any real idea what we needed. Linda's structure has taken a number of different refinements over the time. We've been really lucky to get some great recent recruitment, haven't we?
Yes.
And that particularly in leadership spaces, which has really opened up opportunity for more efficiency in terms of the structure. And you would expect, I think you would expect that if you started off and we went like get as many people as we could in to do the job that we're taking over, you would expect over time that actually things are refined to a better position as opposed to spending more in that. And so this is an example of where this refinement down and the saving from the baseline, we believe is all we need to take us through to the CCO and actually do things really well still.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing. So that's a little bit positive news in that sense, in terms of that's not in the baseline. It would be added into a saving in that sense. Anything for Linda around that?
And I think just on the REM overall is that we've traditionally run over budget. And that's some of that's the headline numbers get adjusted, but we've also made sure we've got adequate allowance for the staff allowances and the overtime that we work, because that's equivalent to about 3 staff by the time you add that up over the year. So
Worship, I'd just like to say well done, and after meeting Fiona Smith recently, one of her key themes has been effective and efficient, and this is right up there. So awesome stuff.
So that's the Three Waters stuff.
Any
And I'll
further
just,
comment?
nothing else?
Linda?
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
No, sorry, Peter, there's one more thing. Okay, so then just in terms of overall, this is an option. I mean, there was a whole section, I think, in the workshop where we talked about remuneration and, where it's sat in the market and all this sort of thing, and why we thought we needed to move to 3.5%. That was in the baseline in there. You do have an option to reduce that 3.5% down to 2.5%. That means that, that's the available budget for salary movements for staff. And it does have a saving. Obviously, things are all part of negotiations, and that doesn't happen yet, but from a budget perspective, that is an option. So it's my job to present you options, so there is an option.
Steve, so you're the person that has a lot to do with this, so is that realistic? Would you be comfortable with the reduction like that?
Well, there's a lot of factors in that, because there is a negotiation that is yet to happen. So I would probably prefer not to be put on record as actually commenting specifically. I mean, I suppose what I should say is I wouldn't put an option on there that was unrealistic, undoable, that side of things. It puts me in a position that is just impossible, right? So I wouldn't put that as an option, but I should also probably be careful that I don't actually make a comment, given that there are negotiations and decisions yet to be made.
Yeah. No more questions? Jules?
I was going to say, I presume everybody saw the December CPI numbers. That's usually what we talk about when we get to that stage, which was 3.1%.
Bruce?
No,
Councillor Graham.
I would be more comfortable to leave it at 3.5%. That just because it's budgeted doesn't mean you have to use it. And I think in the past we've had a budget and we had to go over it. And so it's something that, as Steve said, you don't know what you don't know as far as demands and blah, blah, blah. So I'd be leaving it where it is.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that negotiation will take place before the actual annual plan is concluded or not.
It doesn't.
So it's after
Yes.
July 1st.
That's part of it, always sometimes.
Yeah. It may well start before that, but it won't potentially won't conclude.
Right. Did you need some direction on that? You're right, you've got it loud and clear.
No, I do need direction. We had one councillor say something, which is fine, but we just still need to get a majority view so that we can either include it or not include it, as I say.
Typically go with Councillor Graham's.
I would have differed, but yeah.
You what, sorry?
I'll differ to Councillor Graham.
So what are you proposing, apart from a differ?
What's written there?
So we probably do need everybody to have councillors' views.
Yeah, come on.
I agree with Bruce.
Yeah, happy to leave it at 3.5.
Councillor Grossi.
3.5, but remember, it's not a target.
It can get higher.
Is the employer?
Yeah, Dane, before you burn a hole in that screen, can you share your?
Well, it's well above your, it's already well above your last LTP projections, isn't it? So you're trying to match back to where you were sitting before, so I'm actually going to go with how it's written there with Simon McTennan in that one.
That's
Because it's just a goal to achieve a savings, so you can find an efficiency somewhere.
That still may happen though,
Yes. May.
I think we're still.
Pretty realistic, it was going to budget.
Right, let's move on.
I'd say Sharon, for your purposes, that that's not being proceeded with. That change. Cool. And then, Your Worship, the next thing is the fund bit. Next thing is, right, so there's a massive number of attachments. I have no idea how you want to attack this, but this is the session that is council's proposals, elected members' proposals for changes to the budget.
So to help, for you, Your Worship, to help direct that, there was a separate cover attachment, which is the memo from the Chief Executive, which was session 3, separate cover, session 3, attachment A. That's the majority of information. I think we've already dealt with the next attachment, which is session 3, attachment B, in the work that Linda referred to. So it's mainly that first attachment.
Yeah,
Simon, has everyone found it yet, or?
Attachment A, sorry, will be.
Session 3.
Session 3, attachment A. You've got to have a stretch. Fairly heavy reading. Everyone tracking it down, all right?
Okay.
Right.
The first question I've got, with that whole, all those attachments, all those columns is, what does internal others mean?
What page are you looking at? What page are you referring to, Simon?
Nearly every page. We're in nearly each.
What page is it?
I'm looking at a general one. We've got all the different
page number.
We're in the review of expenditures, correct? Yeah.
It'll probably be pages 19 onwards.
19 onwards.
All those,
So I'm going to refer to all of them. In the expenditure columns, there's an internal others cost. And I just want to have an explanation of what that is. Some of them are the cost.
So that is our overheads, like the finance department, the IT department. And then council made a decision, we look at every long-term plan, we didn't look at it real closely last time. We split those up. And so that is the share, like part of what I do will go to Belmont to Pika, part will go to Civic, part will go to like the end users that we actually rate for there. This is the split of the activities we don't have a rate for.
Yeah. And does that include principal repayment? Because there was one there, I think, that our inclusive poll was like 400,000.
The loan will be separate and specific to them. The only loan we have going through overheads goes directly to water.
Yeah, but internal charges, like the Tupeka, I can sort of get that. Tupeka Community Board, I'm looking at one straight in front of me, 63,000. So that's, I'd be wondering why swimming pool would have 400,000 of internal charges.
It will be based on the formula that was decided way back when.
Yeah.
Just before we get into that, so can you please just explain the internal others? It's charges, so that's what you're saying, it's costing the organisation for all the staff and everything associated to manage that account.
Yeah, you put all the things together and then there's a formula that was based on operating costs at the time, the amount of people that worked in each team, like the whole lot of things go into it. And then a percentage of all of those costs goes to different end users, I guess you'd say. So our time, like all of us are overheads.
Yeah. So as a classic example, you girls are right there, Councillor Harrison and Kennedy, he's lost.
Yeah.
Have you found it?
I'm looking at every expenditure column, basically.
So through you, Your Worship, some councils.
Yeah, hang on, we'll just get these, so these girls are up to speed where we're at.
No, I'm just.
No, I don't know that one.
Page you started 18.
Yep, he's on 18.
They're basically everything.
18, yeah. Starting 18, but we can read it.
It's a general question.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Michelle to get on the same page with all of us before we carry the conversation on.
Is it your OneDrive?
Yeah, that's this one.
Got it? Lovely. So, like Simon used the example there, the Lawrence Tupeka Community Board, you're saying that for this organisation to facilitate the Lawrence Tupeka Community Board is costing us, this organisation, $63,000 annually. Yep.
And
There you go.
Yep, so some of them are substantial. So I moved on. If I will go to Pacific page 30 and 31. Valpo Paul, for example, has got an internal charge of $417,000.
Yeah, I think Jules, has the great memory historically, but Sharon may.
I was just going to say, because I know Councillor Martin's always wanted some history. As a council, we've never charged anything through a general rate, which other councils sometimes do charge treasury functions and things like that through a general rate. We don't do that. And so as the background was, that means that all of those overhead functions had to be allocated out to basically external services that we rate for. So, and that's why you don't see on our rating rate account, general rate for whatever. And so in part of doing that, as Sharon explained, we've got to allocate those costs out through the formula. It may not be 100% for every single activity, but if it's based on number of people, the pool activity has a large number of people. So that'll mean that it'll attract a big component of that. It should be reviewed. It doesn't, and also the community board doesn't absolutely mean that cost us 60,000, 63,000. It means the way we've calculated and allocated on that method, that's how much of the overheads it's received. So some of that is for sending out rates bills, customer service, those sorts of things. So it's not exactly this is our cost. It's we've had to allocate our overhead costs. This is the method that was chosen. It should be updated every LTP, and that'll be something that we have flagged for an update as part of this LTP, because there's some things that probably should be lower in terms of overheads. There's some things that should be higher, and we do need to relook at that. So just try to provide a bit of the history.
We weren't going to touch it because when the CCO goes, there's a change, big difference to all that whole model. So we're going to review it when it makes sense, which is the LTP.
I would have thought reviewing it now would make sense because we're trying to save as much money as we can for our ratepayers.
It allocates, our costs are always our costs. It's just who's paying for it.
Yeah, that's right. But like going back to what Jules was saying here with the Lions Cherubim Community Board, they get charged on their rates $119,000 to run their organisation, and in here internally it's saying $63,000 is what it's costing it. It's on our rates notices how much, but
there are additional charges, like the internal overheads is only part of the cost of running it. There's project costs, there's if there's remuneration for the elected members, all those other things contribute to the cost of running that. So the overheads get allocated as well as all of the direct costs in that activity, and then that makes up what we rate for to run that.
It's been a big jump in that.
well, it tells me that we aren't allocating the charges sufficiently.
No, the things are, if remunerations moved from $8 million like 6 years ago to $15 million, then that is a huge chunk of why every single place is going to have significant increases, right? Because if we're allocating it by people, we're talking about salaries and remuneration, the overhead generating accounts are increasing in costs, so it gets applied in that sense.
And as much as possible, it's directly allocated to the activity. So, for example, water operational staff are not allocated as an overhead across anything. They actually sit in the water operations business unit that only goes to the water teams. The things that Sharon's talking about are things like IT, management. It's those things that actually apply across the org. So as much as possible, we allocate the costs directly to where they fall.
So can we adjust this?
Can we start on page 18 and go through the line and go, right, how do we spend this 5,972 and do we need to spend it next year?
Sorry,
do that.
Are you talking about the internal others, or are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about internal others, just starting at the top of the line of page 18 and just start at the top and go, right, we're spending 1.753 million on Civo. Which line can we chop?
Because every $400,000 is 1%, is that right?
Bucks a buck.
490.
Can we?
Yeah, 490 is
Well,
1%.
that's the point.
Could we?
Can we attack it?
I mean, you can attack anything you want. The idea about your questions was that we were telling you, you didn't have a question that says, tell me Civic, for example, and specifically what they do and all this sort of stuff. But one of your questions was, give me all the information line by line. So we do that, right? And so we're able to give you, based on the questions you did give us, in the areas that you were concerned about post the workshop, areas that you wanted us to give further information, justification. Nobody asked for justification for Civic, for example. And so if you say, well, let's go line by line and do this, we'll be here all day for something. And a lot of it will be, well, some of these things you can't touch. But if you want to go down that line and go there and then force us to say, well, we'll line by line it with you and tell you the consequences of something, then we are in your hands and we will build another day's workshop, not a problem, to address them. So if you want to go that level of detail, that's fine.
Yeah. First of all, a comment? Oh, sorry, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, just back to the what we were talking about before, the internal charges. Like to have a review of that, how much sort of time and that's involved? Quite a big operation.
Yeah, we cannot do it for this budget.
So
it's a major exercise.
My point being is to review it and try and save money, we're actually going to cost us money.
Oh, it's two different things. to review the overheads doesn't save money. It's just how it's allocated. So that's, the model
But
doesn't
it
save
actually
money.
costs us money to review it because of all the staff time to do it.
It does, but it doesn't save you money, the overheads itself. You might save money if you take line by line items out of individual budgets. It's a different issue again, right?
Well, yeah, I'll just come back to it. Well, I was interested just in understanding, and I've been given that as to where it arises from. But I think okay, so we haven't got time to do it now, but it will be important in the future because some of these internal charges, like for example, that Valkyrie pool, it makes up over a third of the expenditure. And so it comes into question as to
What is that?
have we got it's the different rates for different things, and have we got things in the right places? Because it could have quite a switch around in things like UAGC and general rates and things, some of these items. So it's pretty important with the scale of some of those charges and where they should be sitting.
Absolutely, but you've got to do a bottom-up approach.
Yeah, I know we can't do it.
Around all those principles, which we absolutely want to do with you. But it's going to have that major change occurring with the CCO. It just makes sense to do it then.
Yeah. So, but I've got what I need. I understand what it is.
So, I mean, if you want to do line by line,
Yeah, I'm keen to go on that.
is that the view of all the councils?
Time and place is now, no, today. But I mean, like, you can look at Civic on 18 and you can just see, it says internal others, it's the same topic that Simon was on about, 853 on the overall budget of 1.7, you're talking 47% of the total Civic.
Yeah, but if you say...
Well, we know that 853 exists, right? The internal exists, but is that landing in the right spot?
But what we're just saying, councillor, is that that's one of those things you can't touch because that is derived from the model that can only change during the LTP. So the figure, even if you don't
like to know how we get to 853.
What is
I'd like the justification of 853.
Well, we can give you something to simply say how it is. You can't change it. That's the problem.
No, I understand that. On a budget, you can't change it. We know it's going to land somewhere.
So
I'd like to know what it.
Sure. So post this, so we don't have to sweat this today. Post this, we can provide whatever information we can about the existing model and how it's determined. We can do that. Okay, but so that's fine. We'll take that as an action to provide some information on how it's derived. I suppose the point I'm saying is that the internal others can't actually change.
But I think it'd be a great help, once again, that detail, more background. What is this model? How was it created? When was it created? And what's the formula to get to where we're at?
Could do, which I mean, also put out there that if we say to you that we think the model is flawed and doesn't accurately reflect what it should reflect. So I suppose put to you with the effort in doing something to provide you the information, I would probably question how much effort do we have to go to if we're already acknowledging that it's flawed and has to change, and then we'll get involved through the LTP this year. You know, we'll go through the model to create a new one. Do you want our people to have to go and try to explain something that's actually not explainable because it is flawed? We agree that some of these things, the model's been sitting there for years and hasn't been changed, adapted or anything, right? All we've done is fed in more figures based on the costs that we've had into the existing model. It's flawed, it's not accurate in the sense of arguably some areas getting charged more than they should, right? I can't do anything about that while the model exists. I can do something about it when we change the model.
Yeah, but Steve, that's the first time I've heard you say that the model's flawed. And I've been a councillor for 3 years.
Oh,
but we wouldn't know that until you just got asked the question. So staff are admitting that it's flawed, so obviously it needs reviewed, but a bit more finer detail for us to get a better understanding of how it was created in the first place would be great.
So, Your Worship, have you as a previous councillor seen anything like this before? It's been put in front of us. Okay, so my take on that is, so here we have got some really good information. Then all of a sudden there's a line that goes, what's that mean? So this information is coming out now. Well, this could be flawed. So Okay, so what are our options to change the model to what? What best reflects it? Is that what we're asking?
Yeah. I mean, we've said at LTP workshops that we've discussed the overhead model needing to be reviewed, right? So, Your Worship, I might not have said at the time of those discussions that it's flawed. Certainly used the word it needs to be reviewed, and so we've had those discussions at LTP. These cost centre reports are seen in different versions at different times. The community board reports are seen, right, with the same line items, and at different times there are different reports around. Nobody's necessarily seen, Your Worship, that as we've done all in one things, but it's not hidden information per se when if anybody asks for it or at any other time it's provided. So it's not that it hasn't been available or some people have seen certain things, right?
That's not what I'm saying. No. I'm saying we've got it, this is great, and then we're saying, well, maybe, obviously there's plans and workshops for the LTP process to sort this out. So.
I mean, we can answer your question, Your Worship, by simply putting in the LTP workshop section on discussing the overhead model. That will address your question.
Yeah, it's not just the overhead, overhead is one line in the piece of expenditure.
I know, we're talking about the formulas, like how it all creates.
No, we need to talk about every single line.
Yeah, I'm not debating that.
Yeah.
I'm just simply talking about the overhead line. So as I said, if that's resolved, Your Worship, we can build that into the LTP to answer your question, get that moving. Peter's got a note, and now we're in your hands in terms of if you want to go line by line.
So everyone happy with that?
Yes and no. Yes, I agree. We need to have a look at it, but it's a big piece of work, and it's going to link into that whole review of rating and whether that's probably got to take place in the next LTP after the CCEOs. Yeah, so I'm not. I understand. Yeah.
Sorry, we're doing it in LTP workshops.
We have to change our overhead model. It can't be applied as it is with how much stuff's disappearing.
We're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
That affects the whole rating system too.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to go. Yep. We're going to have to do that because I was thinking that would be working towards the LTP following, but no.
No, it's this LTP.
Annual plan this year.
Yeah, but I thought it might have been just too big for the LTP.
No, it's definitely LTP.
It's going to be a big LTP.
Yep.
Right.
So,
right,
workshop
direction, please.
We haven't got time for it today.
Yeah, I know that. I'm looking for direction, what to do with, they want this put into workshop, but we just need to
I'm happy just to do it.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Yes,
right.
Definitely. We pick up what you're saying. We'll do it through the LTP reasonably early. First step, like everything, explain the principles of the existing thing, but also build in later into the program, obviously, the work associated with building up the overhead.
Yep.
So the directions, it's line by line of expenditure, page by page. Right through.
That's what the council wishes. And we are awaiting the discussion.
I just think we haven't got time today.
No, not today. No.
So
it's another workshop.
Yeah,
so I just want to be clear. So this workshop is the last workshop to make changes to the annual plan.
Yeah.
Right? So if you do not make changes, then we're putting the information together, putting the consultation, and the next time you see us, we'll be bringing a final version for consultation. So if you're talking about doing things later, then you're talking LTP. If you're doing things today, you're talking making decisions to affect the budget today. Or we don't have a lot of time, we would have to build another one pretty quickly to follow on from today.
Through your worship, Steve, it might be useful to just mention the workshops we've got planned in the next 8 weeks, which are fairly substantial. We've got today, we've got another LTP workshop on the 24th. We've got a workshop in the morning of the, bear with me, just thinking of this on my head, 24th of
got a workshop on the 5th of March. And there's another workshop in prospect for the 19th of March in the afternoon after the RNA committee, and a workshop on the 1st of April. All those workshops at this stage are pretty well full up with LTP material. So in making a decision about going forward, it will be a case of wanting more time in that space. There is a reprieve after that, but it's not going to slow. I should mention there's no workshops for 8 weeks after the 1st of April because we'll be into the annual plan consultation.
Yeah, the deadline's 5th of March, right?
Yeah. And the deadline is the 5th of March for this, which will be the aim of getting agreement to a consultation document, start consultation on the 9th, in the week of the 9th of March.
Comprende? Right, we'll go back to the original document.
I'm just waiting to find out if we're doing anything around the budget situation.
Well, nobody's saying it. We'll go back to page 3 here, Steve. So internal services, infrastructure, trade, community services. You've got all this detail here, and then we launch straight into current library staffing and stuff. But are you going to talk to this, or is this just for observation only, or?
No, Your Worship, the idea was that you had a session with councillors.
Mm-hmm.
In that session, council expressed interest in a number of different areas, and from that arose a whole lot of questions, primarily around how it might therefore affect the budget and things like that. Therefore, we then took your questions, we did a lot of work associated with it, produced information for this agenda. I mean, the idea being, let's take the library question. Okay, so we gave you a whole lot of information. Is arising from there anything from your side of things saying, close the libraries, or change the level of service, or that's the whole point of presumably what your questions were around asking some things, because level of service equals dollars and things, right? So our job was to answer your bits and then come back from with okay, now we're on receiving mode. What is council telling us in terms of what we want to do around that side, or did we satisfy everybody with the enough information that says services don't change or whatever? So that was the whole point.
Okay, so we kick off on page 13. You'll see here your community library salaries and budgets, and the actuals are way over the ones actually budgeted. So there's obviously an issue going on there, isn't there? Who sets the budgets? Budgets for the libraries.
Who sets the budgets?
Yeah.
Well, it'll be the group manager, the staff of the libraries, and finance and myself.
Because obviously they don't come in; they're all over budget. Is there a bit more? How reliable is the budgeting going to be for this year's?
So the proposed budget that's addressed it, doesn't it? And the issue is that the proposed budget currently addresses the issues of going over at the moment.
So there has historically has been spent on libraries in the next couple of years.
So there has been an overspend going back quite a few years, and we've done some work to look at that. There was one in particular which was around the Clutha Stars that year. That was that sort of drove it up considerably. That was a one-off. So after looking at that, we have looked to increase the budget for this year. I've requested some additional funding so that we're not going to end up over budget. So by doing that, looking at how we're tracking and just trying to get the budget in line with that.
But that's in the baseline, Sharon? Yep. That's in the baseline, isn't it? We did increase it. I think there wasn't there a table of increased remuneration per department or something like that somewhere? Various things that should reflect in that.
So you're saying the budget for this coming year, Mike's 1.2?
Oh, I haven't got the numbers.
1221.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
it's a hell of a significant jump on the last year's.
Yep, well, as I say, we're trying to get it in line with what it actually costs, so that our budget and actuals are more aligned. So that we don't have an overspend.
Well, it's changed though.
Yeah, so what's changed there?
It's changed
What
for
is
services to the people.
Yeah, so there's an increase, so is it an increase of service, or is there an increase of costs, or what is it, wages, or why the increase?
So if you look back at, so 24-25, the actual was 1.27 billion. Yeah, which was over budget. All right. So what we're saying is that in 26-27, the budget is currently, when I prepared this, was 1.221. So that's not enough, right? So I've asked for that to be increased so that it's more in line with what we're actually spending. It hasn't increased. It's been a pretty steady increase in terms of the actuals, and that's probably as you'd expect over the last 3 years. So we're just trying to get the budget and align with what it actually is.
Is there a reason why it's never been in line with
I can't.
Perhaps 4% caps and other bits and pieces and things like that around trying to, the remuneration budgets have been looked at in total. So overall, remuneration hadn't overspent, but we've been reasonably good in terms of total. The libraries had been one of those areas that had been identified that was being overspending, but it was being covered by the rest of the organisation in that sense, which does happen in that sense. But Mike's right. We're trying to get rid of deficits and other bits and pieces and be correct. And particularly if you are questioning, you have to understand that if this is what it costs for the current level of service, because what Mike's identifying is this is the actual cost of the current level of service. The point we're trying to make to you is that if you want to change that level of service, you'll drive down a change in cost. But we need to be on the right baseline as a result. So that's what this is.
I think you find with the increase that is needed. I mean, these are the hubs of the communities, and over the years it's gone past just handing out a book. Okay, there's a lot of work goes into these areas and the services that all our communities get. This is their biggest part of what's really important to them. Whether it be, and technology is a hard one to keep up with today. As you see, I totally lost my place. But yeah, and everybody in our community, whether they're ratepayers or not, are all benefiting big time from the services, and you'll probably find going forward there's going to be more and more added to it. So it's nice to actually see that it's shown in a proper budget, that it's not always running over or we're pinching pennies from somewhere else to live, because this is one of the most important things for our ratepayers.
I don't think that's actually the debate here, Michelle. The debate here is the actual cost of supplying the service. And when you look at Lawrence at 92,000, why is it the lowest, the cheapest to run out of the whole district, Mike? Can you look at an idea?
Well, Lawrence is the only library that really is sole charge. All the others have at least 2 staff.
Yeah. So you're saying a Wacker and Tapanui are twice as busy as Lawrence, their libraries?
This is reporting on salaries, not activity. The table here we're looking at here reports on salaries, not the
I'm just looking
activity.
at the budget.
I can report on that.
I'm looking at the budget there. So is Lawrence the most efficient one that the council operates?
Yes, Your Worship. Of course.
That's what you're telling me. The budget tells me.
I mean, Your Worship, there has been calls to make that not sole charge from a health and safety perspective. And we've held off going down that particular pathway. It would take 2 seconds to jump that up to the same as Milton, for example, because of the issues associated with being sole charge. Lucky that our district actually isn't such a high risk district, and we can still maintain that side of things.
So then the Balclutha one at $627,000, what do they do different?
So Balclutha Library is the hub, it's the district library, so that supports the other 4 outlying libraries. So there's a number of staff there. So they 2 things going on there. They deliver the Balclutha Library service, and they also are supporting everything that goes on. So there's a lot of work to make sure that those other 4 can operate.
Right. Oh, that's great. Amazing what there's detail with us, and you tell me information is key.
It's got all that information.
FTEs and the functions.
Yeah, FTEs and the functions, yeah. Just looking at the budget sheet. Right. Any questions for Steve? We've got lunch scheduled at 12:30, but we don't have to make a decision. We can still work away on this and come back to it after lunch. So no pressure. It's quite an important part of the process today.
Well, Your Worship, we're not going to tell them to close all the libraries, are we?
No.
So what
Do we talk specifically about the library or the whole?
So it's salaries.
Surely, or
we're talking salaries.
The CEO's going. Seem to go around the street saying nothing.
Well, the question was, Councillor Graham, that came from our workshop in December that wanted me to take back to Steve was, can there be savings made in the libraries? He's provided information. So now he wants the direction from councillors.
You don't let the level of service drop, so you increase the budget. Simple as that. And if people don't think, if they think otherwise, maybe they should go and spend an hour or so in the local library and see what actually goes on there.
So any discussion? Actually, have you got it? What's the questions that you presented with the
Worship, the headings are all for questions.
They need to cost me the money that it does? I believe not. My opinion.
User pays, that's what you're saying.
So, infrastructure strategy, community services, explain 2 positions in community services, EA and promotions position.
You'll see the questions.
I'm happy with the library budget.
So that the library one's falling in under this one here then, isn't it? Community services.
Increased budget.
So, just a question, Your Worship, around libraries. So I know this has been debated since 1989, and it's all about libraries going down the track of user pays. Is there any modelling that exists now around that, or is it easy to put modelling together around that?
Sorry, Councillor. Just answering your question.
Just about a user pays model for libraries. I know it's been something debated and talked about since 1989 through the reorganisation of local government then. Is it easy to put modelling together around that or not? Or is there some that exists? Has it been looked at before?
I'm relatively confident that there wouldn't be a user pays. Like there's a difference between the fees you get, let's say, for books and bits and pieces, but actually when you say user pays, there's no library in the country that is funded fully from user pay.
As for swimming pools, just anything else.
So that's the alternative though, isn't it? Something like that.
sorry, you're carrying on. You said, Steve, no library is fully funded from user pays, but do some have charges?
Well, we have charges now. It's rentals of, the latest books and things like that. All libraries have that to some degree. It's the question of to what degree of revenue you get.
Yeah.
You can see that our proportion of revenue is pretty low, but like the swimming pool is relatively low. You can thump up fees everywhere and all that, definitely. But there was always the issue around, does that drive away people? And is that the people you want to drive away and things? And that's the problem councils always have, isn't it? Around the balance between something that is available to our community to not as available to our community.
And through you, Your Worship, we did touch on this when we did the induction. Page 244 of your long-term plan has the summary of what you've set your targets for in terms of what each activity is trying to recover in terms of its costs. And libraries are 5 to 10% through fees and charges, 90 to 95% through UAGC funding. So that's where and it's part of the LTP too. You can have a look at that and say, actually, we want to get 20% through fees and charges.
Yeah.
Library service, please go and figure out how you can do that.
That's probably the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. So that debate is when you're looking at all of your funding mechanisms, you're looking at the LTP and you're saying, how are we going to get this back? How are we going to rate for it? And how are we going to get other fees and charges back? So that's that. The library team are tasked with meeting your 5 to 10% target, and you can change that as part of the LTP process.
There you go. We're going through that soon, aren't we? And also, Your Worship, just adding to the internal wellness debate, would it be a good idea for the councillors in charge of that portfolio to have discussions around that with their manager? And then there's a wee bit of work done there that can come back to council. And I know there's other line by line stuff, but obviously that's the one people are stuck on, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, I suppose, is the right way to put it.
Yeah. And certainly there's no issue whatsoever in the finance portfolio holders having the discussion.
Yes.
Because that's where it's really generated from in terms of that side of things. Not a problem.
Yeah, it's just following on from that, and it leads into this whole, how far do we dig into this today? But Dane and I talked with Sharon about, as part of our portfolio, and when we had some meetings, is to select some of these items and then just have a session, hour and a half, and just work through these lines, and then report back. And I just think for time's sake, it's probably a better avenue, and because this is a long stretch.
Yeah.
What we're looking at here.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And just to get a bit more of an understanding.
But as an example, straight away on 18, if under civic, we'll just go straight here. We'll just go, do we need to be spending $5,972 of next year's budget on CE recruitment performance review? So explain how that total came to us. Can we cut it? Can we halve it? Can we look for $1? That's what we've got to do.
100%.
Yeah.
It's just the process of doing it.
So,
yeah. Is that us for management, mate?
Well, this is the question I'm asking. Firstly, tell me why that 5,972 is there, and then answer me why we can't cut it.
Yeah, and so should that be at your portfolio level? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, for example, as direction, the answer would be, if you decided that you weren't going to use an external consultant to run my performance review, and you just did it yourselves, then it won't cost you anything for a review, except for the year that my contract is up and you need to do something. But that's not next year, right? So that's a different decision. You could say we're not going to apply.
So you've answered my question that we could cut
it. If you decide that you're going to do it yourselves, but that would then mean the executive committee would do that by themselves. And I don't mind.
Yeah, well, exactly. Couldn't guarantee the outcome.
You shouldn't be able to.
I love you three.
We'll break very shortly, but I think you'll see on page 3, if you go down to infrastructure strategy and delivery, right? One of the questions that's got there development engineer, 2 positions, clarification. That was the question that we asked Steve. So if you follow through your agenda here, you'll see 2, explain waste minimisation, waste education and contracts. So there's your answers. We'll work through them when we come back, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty if everybody's happy with Steve's reply. So. But on that note, we'll have a break and a stretch. And
When are we coming back?